The only issue is being able to see it. Christine's gonna test the Zoom real quick, but the only issue is you can't see up there. I think you're fine.
Whatever happens to that recording?
He's gone. Yeah, it's been a while.
Well, I saw it.
Is Christine on there? Jesse?
So nobody can.
Watch it after it's back.
Oh, that's true. Or they could watch the chat on Zoom. I've been watching it for a long time. I don't think I've missed going 1 minute.
Testing.
Perfect. Christine, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Thank you.
In accordance with Section 5 of the Open Public Meetings Act, be advised that a notice of this meeting was made by posting on the bulletin board and town hall and forwarding to the officially designated newspapers that this meeting would take place at Town Hall at 7 p.m. on Tuesday, December 7th, 2021. Meeting details and the draft agenda will also be posted on our township website. Please all stand to salute the flag. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
A roll call vote, please.
Miss Miggins,
Here.
Miss Saul Eglow,
Here.
Mr. Vinayak,
Here.
Deputy Mayor Wasserman,
Here.
Mayor Prupus.
May I
Thank
have,
you.
may I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion.
May I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? May I have a motion to approve the September 9th, 2021 Special Emergency Township Committee minutes?
Motion.
May I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
May I have a motion to approve the September 21st, 2021 regular Township Committee minutes?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
May I have a motion to approve the September 21, 2021 Special Township Committee minutes?
Motion.
May I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Tonight, we have Mayor Becker's here from the Community Service Committee. She's the chair who will be presenting an award tonight and to provide background, and Committeewoman Eglow will be presenting. Mayor Becker, would you like to come?
I'm Elaine Becker, for those of you who don't know me, I'm chairman of the Community Services Work Committee. And so far, since 1991, when the committee started, we have 88 marvelous recipients for our community services work. And tonight we have another wonderful person who has a very interesting volunteer service that has just really been very clear that we wanted to give her an award. So tonight, Laura today will introduce Terry Glass along with Jen Rosenblatt.
Do you mind using the mic so everyone can hear at home? Thank you so much.
Do you this way?
But however you're comfortable, people do it both ways, whatever you like.
Jen and I decided to give Carrie Glass this amazing award because she does things that nobody else probably would want to do. She does videos called Memories Alive, which basically videographies people that are terminally ill. And she sits down with the families and goes through pictures, memories that they have, It's a non-for-profit. It's a very emotional subject for the families, and she really has done an amazing job over the last years supporting this company that is near and dear to her heart. She just mentioned during the pandemic, she has had challenges getting clients to utilize her service. So if you guys know of anyone who's been in this situation, it is something that the kids and parents and family members would like to have to memorialize people that are terminally ill, that they can then take this video and have it for the rest of their life, show their grandkids. So we thought that this was a great way to honor Carrie and her organization. And that's why we decided to give the community service award to her tonight.
Thank you. So, it's pleasure to meet you. I've heard about your services. I know somebody who, use your services. So it's excited that you do this proclamation.
So, whereas Millburn Township, oh, I left my glasses up there. Whereas the Millburn Township Committee values the contributions of volunteers in the township and recognizes those who have performed outstanding volunteer service that enhances our quality of life. And whereas since founding the nonprofit Memories Live in July 2010, Carrie Glass has actively served those in our community and beyond who are living with life-limiting illnesses. And whereas Carrie Glass uses her expertise in videography to produce professional films, she has named Memories Live that captured first-person storytelling to document family history and stories with images that will be treasured for generations. And whereas Carrie Glass has produced more than 220 unique Memories Live films for her clients as legacies for their families and loved ones at no cost to them. And whereas Carrie Glass and Memories Live have adapted as technology has evolved and now has the ability to produce significantly more legacy films regardless of clients' locations. And whereas Carrie Glass has also contributed to the life of our community through serving on the Parent Council of Farbrook School, supporting families who are homeless via the Interfaith Hospitality Network, leading beach cleanups and other environmental endeavors, and volunteering in other activities. Now, therefore, I, Tara Kpis, Mayor of Township of Milburn, on behalf of the Township Committee and the residents on the 7th day of December 2021, extended thanks and appreciation to Carrie Glass for her legacy films, Memories Live, and her selfless dedication to the community and providing inspiration to all. So,
Thank you very much to the committee and the town, mayor, everyone involved for this wonderful award. This has been a wonderful journey since 2010, creating these movies for such inspiring individuals, equal amount of men and women who want to create these movies. And I have, as Diane noted, made a handful of movies of individuals in town. And thankfully, their families have this beautiful keepsake for their loved ones. So thank you again. And it's my honor. And thank you for thinking of me.
Moving on to reports, Committeeman Minyayak, do you have any reports for tonight?
Yes, Mayor. I'll steal some part of my fellow committeeman here on the flood mitigation team. Deputy Mayor Wasserman and I are on the flood mitigation team. We have a great team put in place, and we did a tour of part of the town. We didn't see all the dams, but we went through the bridges and the areas, especially that actually went underwater, including the living space. So all those people who were there, they could see firsthand before we start talking on this initiative. We wanted to make sure they have a pretty good understanding on where we are in the town and how all it kind of come about and what can we do about it. So that's a small part of flood mitigation. I'm sure my fellow committeemen will further talk in detail on that. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you. I also want to add to your report that Assemblyman McKeon's office is also volunteered to be with our committee during a lot of our meetings. He wants to be actively involved to make sure that we get any state support that we might need in terms of funds or regulations. So to Assemblyman McKeon, we want to thank him for helping us. Also, for Explore Milburn, I'm very proud to announce tonight that Explore Milburn has up to this date, has distributed $421,000 to 75 of our local businesses and property owners. And that's an up-to-date number. So I'm very, very happy about that milestone. And in terms of CETA, I also want to congratulate CETA. They had an amazing event this past Sunday. They sponsored acrylic painting workshop, and they had over 50 participants. And it was a tremendous community engagement event. And it was at the Bauer Center. And it was really great to use the Bauer Center because I think it's somewhat underutilized. So it was a really great event, and it's great to see everybody there. And that's my report.
Committeewoman Megan.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, this is about the library, and the director of the library wanted us to know that they're making great progress. They're on schedule. They've been closing up walls, passing permits, filling trenches, and that not to miss the pop-up site. You know, we do have the pop-up site for the library at the old Annie Says. So the library is very much in use, and he said stop on by, and the target date is end of January, beginning of February for the library to open back up. Thank you. That's all for me.
Committeewoman Eglin.
No reports. Thank you.
Mr. Falcon.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Firstly, I'd like to report on litigation that was commenced against the Zoning Board of Adjustment and the Township by Bacone South LLC and Silvio Caruso. In connection with that case, Judge Thomas Moore issued an order temporarily adjoining the township. Temporarily. Temporarily enjoining the township from enforcement against the operation of the restaurant, pending further order of the court. There will be a return date of the order to show cause on January 20th. Secondly, I wanted to just remind everyone that the fairness hearing in connection with the affordable housing settlement agreement is to take place on January 15th at 1:30. A number of comments have been filed with the court. Mr. Buzak, the township special counsel for affordable housing, who represents the township in this case, will be filing a response.
Mr. Falcon, can you just repeat the date of the fairness hearing?
Sure. December 15th. Did I say June? I'm sorry. December 15th at 1:30 in the afternoon.
Thank you. Mr. Molman, would you like to give us an update on the gateway, the Taylor Park Gateway?
The Taylor Park Gateway Subcommittee met a week ago, I think, either a week ago or 2 weeks ago, to recommend MKW and Associates to the Township Committee to authorize a contract with them to design and ultimately be the overseers of construction administration for that project should it reach that point. It'll be on the agenda at the next meeting or the last meeting in December. And they will be presenting to the Township Committee at that date as well.
Great. There were four firms that submitted bids or that got interviewed. I don't remember how many.
Yeah, I believe
10 or so submitted RFPs in total, and we narrowed down to 4 finalists to interview, and MPW was the overwhelming favorite.
Right, and all those RFPs were given to the full TC to, if the review if you wanted to, and the interviews were also presented to the full TC as well. Mr. McDonald, do you have any reports for us?
I do not have any reports, but happy to answer any questions that the committee
I'm
might
just
have.
gonna ask you to address the November KPIs as they relate to the car burglaries from October. Can you kind of speak to the
Yes,
the campaign of locking your cars and how it seems that the data seems that's been useful.
yeah, so we've just compiled the front-facing KPIs for the month of November. They have been posted at Township's website, which indicates that there has been a precipitous drop in the number of car burglaries as well as car thefts. You know, we attribute that probably to two factors. One is certainly the ongoing campaign that we've had to both email on our residents on nights that we do not see much activity, but then to also text our residents when on the nights that we have seen a pattern in activity to lock their cars. As we have stated at previous meetings, 95% of these crimes are being committed as a crime of opportunity in which cars are unlocked or key fobs are left in the car. And so seeing that drop in this month's data is certainly a good sign. Also, the weather continues to get colder. That also plays a factor, but certainly not the only factor or the factor that saw the drop that we've had. So we will continue to evaluate how we communicate and when we communicate and how often. But I think that certainly ramping up the communication has assisted in that.
And Swift 911, when are we moving to the new platform?
We are anticipating a rollover to that, toward the end of this month. We're looking to start the new year on the new Rave mobile platform. But we want to make sure that it's slow and steady. And right now what we are doing is we're calling the numbers that we've brought over from Swift 911 to the Rave mobile system to make sure that we don't have duplicates, to make sure that we have proper numbers and proper format and things like that. So it does take some time. We have quite a few users of the Swift mobile system. So we're just going to make sure we take our time and get it right.
Great. Awesome. Okay. The Township Committee will now consider consent agenda resolutions. Are there any comments from the committee in regards to any of the items listed on the consent agenda? May I have a motion to approve resolution 21-311 through resolution 21-324, which are listed on the consent agenda, except resolution 21-323, which will be considered separately.
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
A roll call vote, please.
Ms. Miggins,
Yes.
Ms. Stahl Eglo,
Yes.
Mr. Vinayak,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Wasserman,
Yes.
Mayor Prupus.
Resolution.
Thank you.
Resolution 21-323. Are there any comments from the committee in regards to resolution 21-323?
Yes, Mayor. I have absolutely no information on this, so I would have no idea how to vote or what we're looking to approve here. And I think we need a further explanation. Please.
Sure. So I can just offer a bit of, I'm sorry, Mayor.
Please.
Okay. I can offer a bit of background here is that this is an authorization to go out to RFP. As the committee is aware, the township has entertained a request for qualifications from potential developers of the 11 Main Street or former, or the DPW site for a 75 unit, 100% affordable development. Those 10 RFQs were then taken up by the subcommittee assigned to this task and interviewed all 10 of them. That group then narrowed that down to 4 development firms that are set to receive a request for proposals. And those 4 firms are the only ones that will be given the proposal. But this has been a process in which they will then receive that. Then we will look to set up additional interviews with those 4 firms with all members of the township committee. This is just an authorization.
Right, so how, since this is obviously a DPW site,
Mhm.
how does potential contamination fall into this going out for bids? Like, how does that work into this whole process?
So currently there's a site assessment being completed. And there are, and that report will be furnished as an appendix to the RFP so that they are aware of it. Now, a site assessment is just that. What it does is it identifies potential areas of concern. And thus far, there's nothing that's been completed in terms of that assessment, but we anticipate having that completed this week or early next week to be provided as an appendix to the RFP.
So I'm just curious, and I'm sure a lot of people are curious because this is a DPW site. If core samples initially show a lot of contamination, how does this affect the project moving forward? Like, who's responsible for that? It might be premature, but if no developer is willing to come in, once we've determined that this has contamination, like the former Exxon station across the street,
Mhm.
is the town then responsible to clean that up? To what degree? And because we know what's going on at the Exxon station, it's been years and years and years and a couple $100,000, and it's nowhere near completion. And now we're also cleaning up a site under the Schoolhouse Plaza. So how does this fit into the whole plan?
So just a clarification, the Schoolhouse Plaza is not our responsibility. It's just we have an access agreement that allows them to come onto our property to deal with it.
Okay.
But it's a good question, Committeewoman. But the site is, if the site should be found to be contaminated, that doesn't necessarily preclude a developer from making it, going through with development. They've all have experience. North Jersey when dealing with various sites. Most sites in our area do probably contain some sort of historic fill. But it doesn't preclude a developer from going forward with the development of that site. They all have experience with cleaning it up. Certainly the first step in all of this, and we're currently going down parallel tracks, is making sure that we're moving forward with the chosen developer route in compliance with and on the schedule with the settlement agreement with Fair Share Housing. But also there is a point now and a checkpoint in that process that we have to make sure that Fair Share Housing approves the site. So that is currently going on. And so to answer your question about whether, quote, there's contamination found on the site, and whether the township would be responsible, I think that the quick answer is yes. However, we have not gotten to that point.
So worst case scenario, let's say the contamination is really, really bad, because we really have no idea. And none of the 4 developers are interested in the project. And we decide that we're not going to build in there now in the future. Are we still responsible to clean that up?
So I think, again, you need to, part of this process is making sure the timing of everything is concise. And so first and foremost, getting the approval from Fair Share Housing is the first step. And so, if there was something there that triggered a response to DEP or an LSRP on the site, then yes. But until that point, then there's no responsibility.
So lastly, I remember you told me years ago that a town is held to a higher standard than just say a commercial property moving in. So since the town will be developing this site will also be held to a higher standard of cleanup? Or is it up to the developer?
I think the standard is sort of, there are times that the town is held to a higher standard when it comes to this, but I think in terms of this, you're looking at a development that, again, if there is some sort of cleanup, would require a licensed remedial site plan and LSRP. And so I don't think that I don't know that that's any different than a commercial property.
And that's going to be on the town to clean up.
Could be, correct, yeah, or it could be on the development. That process has not sort of been fettered out at this point. So.
Just because I really have no idea how this process has been going, so these are some questions I've had.
Sure. No, I appreciate that.
I know this is a huge project and this is going to create a big liability on the township. Project may be about $20 million project, but township liability would be about between $3 and $5 million is what I have been hearing. Want to make sure that request for proposal has that kind of outline. So if it comes to over $5 million, we are in a state to reject the proposal and move on to the next one.
With the request for proposal will absolutely require a financial outlook of the project. Because it's such a complicated process when dealing with 100% affordable development and, applying for various types of low income housing tax credit and things like that, it is absolutely necessary to understand the finances of that.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments? Mr. Falcon?
One quick comment to your question. This is this property will be held to residential site standards, whether it's a public project or a commercial project. It's the highest standard of cleanup that's required. It's the same for either commercial or a public project. Residential site standards are the highest.
So let me just ask you a question. Until it's cleaned, if we don't know if it's contaminated, but let's suppose it is, until it's cleaned up to a certain degree, they cannot start development.
Well, that depends on a lot of factors.
Mhm.
There's sometimes, depending on where the contamination is located, it may be possible to commence parts of the project or cleaning up. It really depends upon what comes as a result of the analysis that Alex is talking.
Okay, thanks.
So I have a few things that I'd like to talk about in terms of the 11 Main Street development. Deputy Mayor Wasserman and Committeewoman Meggins negotiated this deal and we voted on it in August. And I have been asking for 2 information sessions, public information sessions since then. One on the settlement as a whole to give people an opportunity to ask questions and be educated and to explain what was in the settlement. I've even asked to have an information session about our affordable housing obligation, about why the township is in this predicament and why we needed to settle as fast as we did and kind of explain everything. And it's been 3 months and I cannot explain to the community why this hasn't occurred yet. I know that there was not consensus. Oh, I can actually explain it. There wasn't consensus. Other people on the committee did not want to be so forthright and have this conversation. The second public information session that I wanted to have was specifically about the 11 Main Street. Now, I sat on the 11 Main Street. I've been on the subcommittee because Deputy Mayor Wasserman, you didn't want to be on it. You said you didn't have time to be on it. So I stepped onto it. This all happened right after Ida. And I went through this whole interview process and somehow our Beth McManus said that she doesn't have time to give an information session. Like you couldn't schedule something with the professionals. We still don't have it. We have the fairness hearing coming up. Our community has not been briefed. They've not had an opportunity to ask their questions. I'm really embarrassed that this hasn't happened. And it goes to show just the larger community about how our government works. So I sit in the mayor's seat, but I have one voice and one vote. And we work on a consensus, a majority of this committee. So that clearly wasn't the direction that was given to the professionals, including Mr. McDonald. I know the people that made this negotiation wanted to hide from it, don't want to be seen, don't want to be attached to it. They don't want their name anywhere near it. They don't want to come to the community and ask questions or give answers, because if they had wanted to, it would have happened. So I am absolutely not voting to allow any more of this process to happen. I want to say I'm sorry to the community that I failed you in this way, that you're in the dark and you're sitting in the dark and you've been sitting in the dark for 3 months. And I understand Ida came and there was a month of dealing with that, but there's no reason why we haven't had those 2 information sessions. There's absolutely no reason for it. And if Beth McManus couldn't have been there, we could have had someone else there. So I'm voting no for this. And I hope people step up, and if you have questions, because I know we went through a campaign season and people had a lot of questions and there was a lot of misinformation. And I would really just demand more from all of us sitting up here.
Mr. McDonald and Mr. Falcon, I'm here. I wasn't on the subcommittee. And it's not that I voted not to have the information session. I was always told that the information session cannot happen. So would you like to add on this?
After we voted on a settlement, we couldn't give an information
So
session?
you are the mayor, you could have gotten that done
No,
on the
That is
agenda.
not true.
We haven't voted on this, not at all. I have not, this has not come in front of me to vote. If that, I didn't even think we had to vote for this. If you wanted to, you do a lot of information session on everything.
Well,
This could be one of
Mr.
them.
McDonald actually told me that there wasn't support. We had, that's not true. And you
Well-
didn't want it, and you didn't want it, and that's the truth. And you can say whatever you want, but it's not true.
All right, can I speak to?
Not if you're gonna lie.
I don't
No, you
lie.
can't get up here and say
Excuse me.
something if you're gonna lie
Excuse
about
me,
it.
Excuse me, I don't lie, and I really
absolutely
think that's very disrespectful.
I don't. It's the
Okay,
truth.
okay, well,
I don't think it's truth because I'm here, sitting here as well. I've never heard about this. In fact, I would be very, very keen on getting the
Oh, okay, so
information
we're gonna
session.
have 2 information
So-
sessions in the next week, because we don't need Beth McManus to do it.
and I would also say that.
Our community should be told
Right.
what the settlement is. They should be told about the 11 Main Street. Why haven't we educated them? So I'll ask Mr. McDonald, because he'll tell us,
Right.
why hasn't it happened? Why hasn't it
Right.
happened, Alex?
So I think that there was discussion at one point about the best approach to communicating to the public post-settlement.
In August,
In August, correct.
August.
In which that then occurred with a presentation by Beth McManus and others. Shortly after that, we did experience Hurricane Ida, as the mayor had put. Certainly there have been there were immediately other priorities in that situation. For the past few weeks, I have been in earnest attempting to get a meeting set up because I have been relying on Beth McManus as the expert in that field to present to the public and make sure that
Ed Buzak could have done it. He
That
could have
Ed-
absolutely he's been sitting, Beth was here for a month. She was our planner for a month.
look, I'm just explaining the current situation
I
and that
understand.
and
I'm
that
explaining why I'm so disappointed in this committee for not educating our public and for hiding and wanting not to have their names too attached to it.
Excuse me, I don't
That's
agree
a
with you.
lie.
I
Again,
don't
that's a
agree, that is a
total
lie.
lie.
And I want to
think-
say something else for the public. I was very proud to be the signatory for the town for the settlement. And Ms. Megan and I spent literally hundreds of hours, negotiating, with the state, with the court. And I'm very proud of the agreement, no matter what you say.
Okay, so the
I'm very proud of it. I'm not done yet.
So Woodmont.
Excuse me, I'm not done
Woodmont
yet.
came in at
Excuse-
129 units.
excuse me,
and you
I'm not
settled at
done.
195, and you're
Ex-
proud of that?
Excuse me, we had to meet our
Interesting.
responsibility because over 36 years, we didn't do what we were supposed to
You
do.
keep going back to that, but you negotiated
So
this.
I think again, Mr. McDonald, maybe you can talk about this. I refuse to even engage in this where I've been told that I actually said no to something. No,
Yeah, you
Okay.
can put it
She
on.
has one
Why don't
vote.
you put it, why don't
Other
you put
person
it on
has
the
one
agenda
vote.
and we
it
can.
has never been voted for. It has never been come
We-
even forward.
Ms.
Can we
McManus,
present or not present? As you mentioned, Beth McManus was here. She presented it.
she did
After
present.
that, if there was any other presentation to be made, there was nothing asked.
And
So
I
please,
asked it here, but we
spare-
haven't watched the video. We
spare
talked
the
about it
co-
last
spare
week.
the
We
comment
talked
of
about it. I
saying,
talked about it
oh, I'm
publicly.
disappointed with the committee. You are part of that committee. I'm disappointed in you as a mayor.
I'm
Right.
disappointed.
That you actually got this as a saying, oh,
Right.
We couldn't do this. No, that's a
Okay.
lie, straight
That-
lie.
that
I
is a
don't
lie.
know. Are there any, so I'm gonna vote no, and I think having 75 units of affordable housing at the DPW site is a disaster, and I want no part of it. So, may I have a motion to approve resolution 21-323?
We have to start comment. Can I ask for the comments?
No, I just said,
Before
may I have a
we-
motion to approve resolution 21-323? Is there a motion to approve it? No, I asked for a motion.
Wait, isn't there discussion on this?
We just
So-
did. We just had a discussion on it.
Well, I don't think we closed discussion.
Oh, okay.
I don't think we closed discussion.
Okay,
Okay, then
great.
I'd be happy to add something. So I believe it was Miss Miggins who found Beth McManus. And when that happened, it kind of played on the hand of our town planner, Mr. Phillips, who wound up resigning. That means on all those discussions, of which I haven't been briefed, so if the public hasn't been briefed, I can let you know I haven't been briefed. And that we never had our town planner talking about our best interests when this all was going through. We had not hired topology yet. So I never had a seat at the table. I don't really know how all the negotiations went. So all I know is we did not have our town planner because Miss
Because he
McManus,
resigned.
wait, excuse
He
me.
resigned.
He resigned because Miss McManus was hired. Let me finish. And now you made me lose my train of thought. Wait, I'll get it back. So, Miss Maddox, her job is to actually settle fair share housing cases. So I'm not really sure whose best interest she brought to the table. Was it the fair, of which she, I believe, is a special master? She settles these cases for a living. So I'm not really sure that we had Millburn Township's interest. I just want to go back in the history. When I was sitting in that center seat and we had to approve Silverman, Miss Makins and Mr. Wasserman, who was my running mate at the time, slammed me in front of a room of about 120 people, saying that we should never have had that settlement. But I want to say what Mayor said.
I also pushed for that information session,
Yes.
and you didn't really want to do it. I wanted to.
Okay, so I take,
All right.
that's fine.
It's all right, I'm just,
But we
you know,
kept that,
giving facts.
we saved about 20 units on that from 75. I can't remember the numbers. But the point is, we could have had 125 at Woodmont on JFK, but because you guys didn't like that, you thought you were now going to have 195.
Okay,
195.
so you're arguing we should have rejected the settlement and the town would have suffered from
I just want
all of these lawsuits.
just want to make a
If
note,
that's-
Mr. Wasserman, is that
Excuse
Mr.
me,
McDonald.
we had, you know what, we have a responsibility, we
Mr.
have a
Wasserman,
constitutional
Can I ask a
responsibility.
question?
How
to
come, where was
support
that
the settlement.
responsibility when Silverman and you and Miss
Excuse
Mason
me, can I
now?
make a suggestion here? Can I make a suggestion?
Nobody
Yes.
fired him.
Just a moment.
All right,
Can I make a suggestion here? Let's have one meeting and let's have one person talk at a time, recognized by the mayor. I don't mean to give a little sermonette here, but you all adopted a code concerning the manner in which meetings were going to be held, which involved the concept of having respectful conversations, having dignified proceedings. Everybody gets a chance to say what they think they ought to say. That's obvious. But one of the key attributes of leadership is by demonstrating leadership. If you think that people in the audience act disrespectfully to you, maybe that's because the way you deal with one another. So I just make a plea to you to be recognized through the mayor who's presiding at the meeting and have one person at a time speak. Everybody gets a chance to say what they think is, relevant to the consideration of this matter, which has come onto the table. But if I could
Thank
make
you,
that
Mr. Falcon.
observation.
So, Mr. McDonald, it seems now that we can actually have two information sessions, one on the larger settlement and one specifically on the 11 Main Street development. So that way, everybody in our community can know exactly what's going on and ask their questions. Unfortunately, I don't know, can we do it before the fairness hearing? Can we have Ed Buzak do it?
As I said, and I had mentioned to you, Mayor, it is an extremely difficult time to nail people down and be able to schedule an information session. I have been attempting in earnest to do so, not at your behest. And it is just, it just has not been possible to have, again, and I don't feel comfortable getting in front of a room of people and being able to discuss the settlement or the fairness hearing. And there are different aspects to the settlement, to the fairness hearing, to 11 Main Street, including planning, the actual settlement agreement, the legality of things, and questions that will pop up will span a whole host of things, which is why I was attempting to make sure that our professionals were there, that there were multiple professionals there, so that they could be able to answer the questions of the public, because that's important. And so I have continued that effort in earnest, and I do not think it will happen before the fairness hearing. And I've received dates from both Beth McManus, and I'm waiting on a response from Ed Buzak with regards to dates in early January in which to set up these meetings.
Okay. So I do not understand how it took 3 months. And I do not believe in earnest in 3 months. So I'll leave it at that.
I have a
May I have-
question. We were just called upon and said, Beth McManus, and we didn't have a say. I remember I was out of town. I was even called in for the meeting to interview Beth McManus. Was that not done with the entire TC?
No, I wasn't.
Well, look, I mean, you're asking me to recall events that, and I'm not able to do that at this point in time.
Okay.
But
if there is anything we can do, my thought process so far had been that judge is the one who's denying that fact to have the information session. If he's not denying it, we absolutely need to have information session, as many as possible, as much as possible. It was never asked to me that we need to have a vote here to get the information session. I had been always under the impression that we cannot talk about this. So if we can, I would suggest please do so.
There's a difference, if I may. The judge is not preventing an information session from occurring. The settlement agreement and what it means can be explained, as well as I think the mayor mentioned, and maybe deputy mayor, the history of how this developed and what the requirements that were placed upon the township to provide its reasonable opportunity for the development of affordable housing. All of that can be discussed in that can occur. I don't want you to think that the judge is somehow preventing the township from holding an information session.
We had that back a long time ago at the high school. Mr. Buzak, I believe you're, yeah, so,
Library.
and there was also one at the high school.
there was two.
There,
There's
yeah, it
one
was
at
at
the
the
high
high
school and one
school.
at the library.
So we did have it. I don't know why it didn't happen. Haven't been included in a lot of things. I don't know. I've tried to get information. All I know is now we're where we're at. And I do want to say that Woodmont did offer settle 125 and now we're at 195. I was strongly encouraging us back in January to accept that. But now we'll have what we have, and I believe we're in litigation with them. That's not a secret, right, Mr. Falcon? Yeah.
There's no litigation over.
It has to do with the fairness hearing.
Have to do with rooftop decks?
We don't have another suit.
They're just intervening,
Intervening.
it's not a litigation.
Oh, it's not a litigation. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, wait, may I have a motion to approve resolution
Another question
21
before we move
3?
on this.
Wait, are you gonna actually?
Yes,
Mr.
I
Falcon
can
said-
ask the comment.
So, well,
I can ask the
oh,
question.
okay. Wow.
Thank you. So if we do not vote today, what happens?
Process comes to a halt, and I don't think you want to do that in light of the December 31 deadline in the settlement agreement to make substantial progress on it.
The RFP, Mr. Falcon, approving an RFP does not bring that to a halt. What you just said to Mr. Committeeman Vinyayak is not true. We don't have to put out a proposal for a 11 Main Street development. We just have to submit a consensus plan. I mean, yes, right, a concept plan. You're wrong. We do not have to approve this.
This process will come to a
It will.
halt. If you've
Without
elected
putting out an
to,
RFP at this moment in time,
you put out You put out.
For a developer, I do not believe you're right.
I'm not involved in this process,
Right,
but what
but
I
I've been
understand
seeing-
is that
I'm pretty
an
sure.
RFQ was put out, a number of people made submittals, that was whittled down. The next step would be to put out the RFP to the remaining people.
There's no timeline.
There is a timeline.
Who is requested to put this on this agenda?
The subcommittees. Right?
So, Mr. McDonald, can you talk about this? Do we need to have this on?
So the purpose of putting this on tonight's agenda was to bring it to the attention of the full committee. This process of approve the request for proposals isn't really, it's not a necessary step in how these things normally happen. However, given the discussion tonight, I think it's good that we've put it on there for the township committee. I think that the issue that the mayor is speaking to is that, and you're both correct in my mind, in that it does bring the process of getting proposals, choosing a developer to a halt. You are correct that the next step that's necessary is the approval of a concept plan by Fair Share Housing. Now, there could potentially be implications going forward of delaying the process of an RFP when it comes to choosing a developer, getting them working on the site plan, having low-income housing tax credits being applied for, and all of that. But you are correct that it does not need to happen right now, but it will impact the schedule and will bring it to a halt. And the next step is approval by Fair Share Housing of the concept plan.
I believe also, if we put this to a halt, the tax credits that they're talking about, which we're having a Zoom call with Mark McBride on Thursday to discuss the difference between 4% and Aspire credits and 9% and et cetera. There is a limited number of 9% credits. If we will wish to pick a developer that's only going to focus on us as the town, because it's a highly competitive race, as it were, for the money. So
Are you committing to the 9% over the 4%?
we're not committing to
Aspire?
anything.
Well, Your personal.
I
your
haven't
personal
made a
opinion.
decision. I have to wait till, I like to be educated. So on Thursday, Mark McBride will be educating us about that. So my
Okay,
point is
got it.
that it's important that we do keep this process moving
Right.
forward, and that we do submit these for, we do allow them, because there's a whole process that goes with this. There's a.
Yeah,
so much
I don't
paper.
think that we should be building a 75 affordable unit on that site.
Yeah,
So
that-
I'm good with I'm good.
So,
Are you-
so this proposal and the information session can be held simultaneously? I mean, while we approve this, you can still get the information session, and that is not going to collide or put any pressure on either or.
I think they're being connected for some rationale on individuals' positions, but I don't know that they have to be connected. You can have an information session and move forward with the RFP process.
Right.
What would
And-
happen
and-
if, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, excuse me, Mr. Falcon, from my experience or from our settlement discussions that Ms. Niggins and I were in, from what I remember, there was a very tight time frame in terms of when everything had to proceed. And isn't that your understanding? So if this didn't happen now, this would slow down the process of deadlines that we might have to meet. Is that accurate?
It could. I think, well, I probably don't want to say that because it's confidential advice to you about the reaction of Fair Share Housing Center to putting this process off. I would limit myself to saying that would be viewed by them as a reason to complain to the court that Milburn is not satisfying the schedule and the anticipated process.
If we table this for
That's
next
what I was gonna
meeting,
say.
would that make any difference?
You know, Honestly, my recommendation is that this move forward because we're gonna face, I think we're gonna face trouble if we don't move forward. That's my opinion from our settlement negotiations. There's a very tight timeframe. People may not agree with what was done. But this was, the court gave us a very limited choices here.
So with this 75 unit coming in there, that as a yay or nay, we have all accepted it, and it was not even an option. That was how pressured we were. So I'm not going to go back on my decision of saying, now my yes is a no, because I committed to it, and I will, with this whole, like I supported before, I'm going to support it right now as well. So our township doesn't get into what other town, I think somewhere in Englewood happened. So I want to stay out of that trouble. And I've seen or heard about the discussion happening on Woodmont. And I know, again, I don't know how much I can share here. I just keep thinking about that I cannot share anything. What happened with Woodmont, and I assume everybody here knows that because at least all 5 of us were in those meetings. So I am not saying, or I'm not opposing about 75 units, but with this proposal and the information session, I'm strongly in support with however information session we can do, we should do it.
Mr. Falcon, I have one last question for you. We're sitting here discussing everything that Committeewoman Eglo brought up, things that were in closed session. Should that have been done? Should we have talked about things that were in closed session? Different negotiations that we were doing while we were in closed session with Fair Share Housing and with when we were meeting in reference to the Woodmont property, because not all the facts are out there, but she's said some things and some of it was wrong, but it was in closed session.
The mayor referred to that also.
Ms. Eglo, you're the one who brought it up, and it was something that was done in closed session. And it should have,
Megan, are you reprimanding Committeewoman?
I'm not reprimanding her, I'm asking our attorney, our counsel a question. That's what I'm doing.
Well, as a general proposition, the matters that are discussed in closed session have to remain confidential. As a practical matter, however, all of that is melded into the settlement agreement. The settlement agreement is what you have and what you must deal with and comply with to the best of your ability. I would suggest that anybody who would be inclined to disclose what was discussed in those mediation sessions, when the mediation team reported back to the township committee for direction on what should be done next or what negotiating position should be taken, that should not happen.
Thank you.
Well, I'm just sorry to the community that there was no information session. So, and I hope there's one specifically on this 11 Main Street development. May I have a motion to approve resolution 21-323?
Motion.
May I have a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Miggins,
Yes.
Ms. Stahl Eglo,
Dane.
Mr. Vinayak,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Wasserman,
Yes.
Mayor Prupus,
Resolution 21-325. Are there any comments from the regards to resolution 21-325, awarding contract for the collection, removal, and disposal of solid waste and recyclable materials to Giordano Company? May I have a motion to approve resolution? Were there any comments? May I have a motion to approve resolution 21-325?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Miggins,
Yes.
Ms. Miggins. Oh, thank you. Ms. Stahl Eglo,
Yes.
Mr. Vinayak,
No.
Deputy Mayor Wasserman,
Yes.
Mayor Prupus,
May I have a motion to approve resolution 21-325? We did that already. May I have 21-326. Are there any comments from the committee in regards to resolution 21-326? To award contract for transportation disposal and removal of type 13 waste from the Department of Public Works yard from suburban disposal. No comments. May I have a motion to approve resolution 21-326?
So moved.
May I have a second? Second. All those in favor, or roll call vote, please.
Ms. Miggins,
Yes.
Ms. Fall Eglo,
Yes.
Mr. Vinayak,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Wasserman,
Yes.
Mayor Prupus,
Yes. Ordinance 2594-21. Mr. Vinayak is scheduled to sponsor ordinance 2594-21.
I would like to present an ordinance entitled Ordinance 2594-21. Ordinance amending and supplementing the Township of Milburn Development Regulations and Zoning Ordinance. Mr. McDonald, do you want to just give a brief detail on this ordinance, please? This is loading and unloading.
Yeah, so this ordinance addresses the need for multifamily development to have a on-site loading area. It also addresses an increase in the number of units to correspond with an increase of the number of loading areas or loading spaces that are needed for a particular development.
I move that ordinance be taken up and passed on first reading, and that the township clerk be authorized to have the ordinance published in accordance with the law in the item, and for hearing and final passage on Tuesday, December 21st, 2021.
May I ask a question about procedure at this point? Mr. McDonald, Mr. Falcon, or Ms. I have a question about procedure. So I believe it was the last meeting I had asked for a one-time only allowance of people affected by the flood to be able to speak public comment before we had a 4.5-hour meeting. And Ms. Miggins, Mr. Wasserman, Mr. Vinayak denied that one time. And Ms. Miggins had a comment like, wow, the rules keep changing here. Now, I remember specifically, I don't know what it was in the beginning of the year, we had specifically said that we are not going to pass new ordinances in 2 consecutive meetings. It was always done historically, having a meeting in between to let the public remunerate on it, to learn about it. By bringing up an ordinance tonight, and this is for both of these ordinances, 94 and 95, the only way to bring them up tonight is to have a second reading at the next meeting, December 21st, the last meeting. So now we're passing 2 zoning changes, major changes to our zoning rules at 2 consecutive meetings. I don't know why we're changing the rules, why we're rushing these through. It's going to be the same 5 of us up here next year. We're all going to get along. And why are we doing this in this rush manner? Because this is now going against everything we've been trying to happen this year. So why are we doing this? Ms. Miggins, Mr. Vinayak, these are your 2 ordinances.
So I will talk to mine. When we said the rules were changing, that was, I guess, putting in a comment before we were saying yay or nay to that rule. And for this rule, I say yes, we go ahead, and I'll let Maggie talk
Mr.
about
Vinayak,
the other.
Okay, is this a crisis of something of emergent that we needed to push this through in 1 month? Because that the second reading, when the public gets to comment, is December 21st, 4 days before Christmas, end of the year. People are really busy.
We can't have an information session.
Right,
We
so
expect people
how,
to come up and comment.
and these are
4
2
days.
big changes to our zoning laws in town. So why is this so emergent and of a crisis nature that we have to push this at the last 2 meetings of the year? Can you explain to your loading?
Ms. Ecklo, whatever you're saying, again, your thought process, what I'm doing, we have spoken about loading zone multiple times in our meeting here, in a planning board meeting, and I would like to move it further up. If there are other 2 members who want to refuse it, or 3 members, I will take it off.
Why are you not willing to wait till January and do this in the proper fashion, how we've always worked for all the years here at
Because
Town Hall?
I do not think exactly the way you think. It's exactly.
So this
what
is
I'm trying to-
emergency. This is an emergency issue.
If you want to think it that way, please do so, because to me, this has been coming in. I was the one who actually stopped it last time when it came through because planning board recommended some changes. And we went ahead with that same. I actually was talking about this and I stopped myself because I was in the planning board meeting and I wanted to take their input in it. So that consideration was done too. So it is not the first time we are going through this. I feel very comfortable introducing this law, or this ordinance. Again, up to you.
Okay, I think we're just setting precedent that we can do this now, right?
We
So
can cha- okay.
sometimes we'll do it every other meeting.
Based
Sometimes
on-
we'll just do it one meeting after another.
I guess
Right,
based on 3
that's right.
votes, we can do
Yeah,
what you
on
want to
3
do.
votes, you can do whatever you want. Except the ones that you need
Again,
for.
this is how you want to put it, sure.
Okay, so there is no precedent. We should just make clear on how we're gonna deal with ordinances.
So, Mr. Vinayak, you're comfortable with that, having kind of a hobnob way moving forward to next year?
I am not going to engage anymore on this
Okay.
ordinance. I've said my piece. I'm done.
Okay, is there
Thank
anybody
you.
else that, may I have a second? He moved, may I have a second?
Second.
Chair, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Ms. Miggins,
Yes.
Ms. Saul Eglo,
No.
Mr. Vinayak,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Wasserman,
Yes.
Mayor Prupus,
Yes. Ms. Miggins is scheduled to sponsor ordinance 2595-20.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to present an ordinance entitled Ordinance Number 2595-21, an ordinance to amend and supplement the development regulations and zoning ordinance of the Township of Milburn, Chapter 6, Subsection 609, entitled Supplementary Regulations. Purpose of this ordinance is to amend the Township of Milburn zoning code to include a prohibition of rooftop decks, platforms, terraces, and similar features on the roof of a building for use as a common amenity space. The supplementary regulation would be prohibited throughout all zones of the township.
Do we discuss this? I have some questions.
I don't know, do we discuss it? Mr. Falcon, is there room for discussion during first reading? At what point does that discussion happen? Right now? Great.
I believe our planner's on the line, Alex, for questions, because I don't know who wrote this. I do have some questions.
Greer is on the line. We cannot, Jesse will bring her on.
Hello, Greer Patras is here. Can you hear me?
Yep. Hi, this is Committeewoman Eglo. Greer, did you write this definition?
I did not write this definition, but it was prepared in coordination with Mr. McDonald, Phil Abramson, and Graham Petto. Phil and Graham are of my office, but are unfortunately dispersed in other towns tonight. But I can provide any comments or clarifications for it.
So I don't think it's just that clear that if somebody has a rooftop deck, as long as it's screened, does that mean that if someone builds a building or a home, because this is also residential, can they put a deck on top of a garage or a flat roof if they have walls up, or if they have lighting that is pointed down and they don't have a fire pit? Like what, I'm not really clear on what, I mean, I am never in favor of a townwide ban. I think it just opens us up to litigation or people applying for variances. So like, for instance, if someone has a garage and it's in the back of their house or the side of the house and they want to put a patio chair on that, is that allowed? Or is that-
No, under this definition, a patio chair on top of a garage roof structure would not be permitted.
How about if they put walls on that garage?
So are you referring to the interior courtyard area portion of this? So
Well,
the
there's a house with a garage that they could walk off their master bedroom, put a door and sit out on the top of the garage. That's not going to be permitted?
Correct. That would not be permitted by this. The intent here is that there's a courtyard that would be, enclosed by exterior building walls, not necessarily like screened by a fence parapet or something like that, if that's the difference.
Okay, so I think the Hilton has a rooftop bar. If the Hilton reopens, are they going to be able to continue use of their rooftop bar?
So time of application would be anything that was approved prior to the introduction of an ordinance would be able to legally remain. The approval for a site plan or use runs with the land, so it wouldn't change anything that's currently legally existing.
And restaurants, if they have the ability to have a rooftop deck, if they don't want to be on the street, say, and they're limited to certain hours, that would also be denied. Or an office building that wants to provide, let's see, what's the wording here? No shared amenity, no common amenity space for building occupants and guests shall be prohibited.
Correct. That's the intent of how this was written. Unless it's a courtyard, so fully enclosed, so not able to be visible from the outside, it would not meet that intent.
So okay, so if a building were to be built and they put a rooftop deck, but they put a wall all the way around it, not allowed?
No, it's exterior building wall, so there would have to be some enclosed building in it. It can't just be like a screening wall. It would have to actually be an exterior building wall. So the exterior of a building, like if you were looking at a cube and you hollow it out the middle, that would be the courtyard. So that would be permitted, but unless you had building area enclosing it, it would not be.
Okay, so, well, oh, and as I think I asked Mr. Abramson at the last meeting, an applicant can still go and ask for a variance, or this is so stringent that they could never even be considered for a variance if it met certain rules and regulations?
So yeah, they would definitely be able to come in for a variance and meet the variance proofs. And, you know, every application is heard on its own merits and its own unique circumstances. So there could be, you know, circumstances where the, you know, the site design and use calls for some sort of exception, and that could be granted by either the planning or zoning board, depending on the case.
Okay, well, for the record, I have never voted for anything that was like a townwide ban. So I think once wasn't comfortable with it, but no, I can't vote for a townwide ban, especially when it can still be overruled by variance. Okay, thank you.
And Claire, this is for residential, like this is for residential and commercial. So if somebody, Claire,
Yes, I'm listening.
just, can you confirm that so it's residential as well as commercial?
Yes, I believe that is the written intent.
So if someone has a home and lots of land around it, they can't put a rooftop, anything on top of their roof.
Ms. Miggins, is it, were you the, I'm sorry, or Sanjeev, had the initial drafting of this in that language?
Right, so it was originally, Alex, if memory serves, we were talking about the commercial piece of this.
Mhm.
And we discussed also the residential.
So I think if you have this prohibition is in the supplementary regulation, so it would apply to all homes, all zones, all commercial. And so to Greer's point about being able to apply for a variance if you had a home that had that, you know, type of land or space or whatever. But yes, sort of like a lookout deck on top of a home. Yeah, I think that would qualify under this ordinance as being prohibited.
Are we talking single family home also here?
Yes.
We had discussed multifamily homes about this deck, rooftop deck when it came in.
Mhm.
So I feel that this has been added, which is kind of misleading a little.
Well, you can't, like, if you're doing a prohibition of a townwide prohibition of something, you know, it
And a
applies.
multifamily home is what we discussed, 5 and over units.
No, the 5 and over units did not apply to this discussion.
So like the house that's up on the corner of Hartshorn and Robert, I think it is, that has a rooftop deck that looks out into people's yards. It's a second floor.
Well, I can't speak to the distinction between a rooftop, like a second floor terrace or a second floor, you know, balcony or whatever it might be. But in terms of a roof, and having a platform on a roof, then yes, this would apply to that.
And if somebody wanted to, as Greer said, they can go for a variance for this. They can go for a variance for this.
And get denied.
Well, no, there's
So-
precedent where they do have, there are other homes within the town.
Well, and there's also a hotel with a rooftop bar.
And there's
Hilton.
also a
So
new, the Upton, which was
Yeah.
just built, that doesn't have a rooftop. Instead, what they have is it's an amenity space for the people that live at the Upton. And this was a building that was just built and it's set down. So that it is there, so that there is an amenity space. It's just, there's a safety issue with this. So that's.
So
Is it possible?
wait, can I give, when you go?
Ms. Megan, is it okay if we put this back and bring it just for multifamily home like we discussed earlier and then?
Alex, can we do something like that or no? You can't do it based on this. On the,
We have to reintroduce the ordinance.
no,
You'd have to reintroduce the ordinance and you would have to do that at the January
But what-
18th meeting.
what we put up, what was sent to us today with Graham was on multifamilies and commercial properties.
It's in the supplementary regulations and that applies to all zones.
So I want to talk about the origins of how this all came about, specifically to the Silverman project development that's going up. And the many planning board meetings and the very vocal opposition to the rooftop decks. And I understand why in that space, in that community. And I think that it is very misfortunate that there are rooftop decks occurring on that particular building in that particular neighborhood within our township. I do not think that calls for or warrants a town-wide ban on rooftop decks everywhere, especially people's single home, private properties, up in Short Hills when there's lots of space and lots of land. I also think Woodmont, and we can talk about Woodmont because they're not suing us, right? They have submitted to the fairness hearing. So what is that called? Are they intervening? What is that called? Okay. But when they gave that, what they're objecting to in terms of the ordinance that was passed here at the last meeting, what is that called? What is that objection called? Just their comments? So they're just commenting at the fairness hearing. Okay, and that's all public. They're objecting. And one of their things that they're objecting to is that they were not allowed to put a rooftop deck in that space, which would overlook, if everyone doesn't know where it is, it's on JFK across from the Upton. Is that a good, by American Jersey Water, and would look out into the wetlands, right? So just land. There's no other people living up in that area other than the Upton across the street. I personally do not see an issue with them having a rooftop deck there. I think especially coming out of COVID, I mean, we're still in COVID, right? So we're all sitting here with our masks on or behind these. And we know that there is a need for outdoor living space. And even the people that are living in multifamily units, while they're not, of the same, they don't have the single families, I think they should be afforded as much outdoor space as possible. I have a real problem with doing a townwide ban on this. I think it should be a conditional use. I think we should implore the planner to come up with different areas, zones in the town and what it should be. Do I think that people should be in areas of town where the houses are close together, building patios where they can look down? I do not think that that's okay. I think people should be able to have the privacy in their own homes. But when you're talking about at Woodmont, I think it's okay. And when you're talking about homes with lots of land up in Short Hills, I don't think they should come and have to get a variance for a rooftop deck. So I think that we are putting a wide blanket zoning regulation on something that needs to be looked at in specific cases, and that's how we should approach it.
So I have something to say. First of all, Woodmont isn't passed. They have to go to the DEP in order to get permission to build on that water property. So let's just start there.
What does
So-
that have to do? Or what?
Plus
what do
the
you mean?
fact that
What
from
do
a
we
safety
clarify?
perspective, well, they're not, you keep referring to it and thinking it's okay that it gets done out there. They haven't even been authorized to build out there, but they're 90 feet up. They want to put a deck 90 feet up. That's a safety issue.
Decks happen
Also-
everywhere.
also,
Committeewoman
May I
Megan, they
finish, please?
happen
I'm speaking,
everywhere.
I'm
You're gonna-
speaking, Mayor, I
Oh
am
my
speaking.
goodness,
Thank
I'm
you,
speaking.
thank you,
Love that
Thank you.
terminology.
thank you. Also, people have been putting up rooftop decks on homes. There's a small lot down in the South Mountain section. The neighbors are aghast about a rooftop deck, a second floor rooftop deck on a house. There are people putting decks on their homes that are staring down into people's kitchens and yards and everything else. I think that there's no reason why we can't ban these, and there's no reason why people, like they do, they go to zoning and they ask for a variance, and we do give out variances in our town. So I think it would be better for people to go and ask for those and then have a ban on these. I think it is a safety issue. I think we've had complaints of some of the places in town with noise, et cetera. It'll just get more magnified as it's up higher. This is just my opinion. I've had people come up to me and ask me to please ban these. And anytime I've seen rooftop decks, it was cited in Summit. It's on a commercial building. They're on commercial spaces.
But you want to ban those as well, and you just talk about decks. How is this affecting?
No, a
Decks.
second floor decking, that,
I mean,
you have people, Diane, it's right in your neighborhood. I'm surprised you haven't seen the house.
my deck's up on the second floor because the way my house is on a hill. What, so people can't put a deck outside,
No, these are rooftop decks on the roof. So. for
but not a
instance,
regular deck?
No, you do have one in your neighborhood though, where your neighbors are gassed, absolutely gassed, that there's this.
I haven't heard about it. If it's my neighborhood, I haven't been told about it.
So if I may please, this all, as Mayor Purpose stated, this all started from the multifamily homes.
Mhm.
And whether that's Woodmont in JFK or the one that we have Silverman here, if we set a wrong precedent there, it is very difficult to say no to the builders. They are so adamant. After the entire community coming to the planning board meeting, they still kept insisting on having a rooftop deck here. So the height of the building and the rooftop deck, those are the two things even I feel that should be banned. But we have never discussed, or at least we have discussed on bringing individual homes later with the other sub-zoning recommendations. So I am all for banning the rooftop deck on the multifamily home. At least that's what my vote will go for. But if I may, please request to have a multifamily home in there,
Well,
or commercial building for that
it's-
matter.
It says it here, the roof of a building for use as a common
Right.
amenity space.
And I
It's
actually
not-
spoke
that's what
with
it is.
the planner and
That's
made
right.
sure this is mainly for a
Commercial.
multifamily home,
Commercial,
not as an individual home.
right.
But it says
So
all
he
zones
said
of the
yes to it.
township, so you have some
But-
conflict in this.
well,
reading here.
But Mr. McDonald, when we spoke earlier, and you and I even talked about residential, you said, no, residential's for a different time. We'll talk about that next year, that this was just for specifically
Yeah,
commercial buildings. That's
I
what we
have actually
discussed.
spoken to Committeewoman Megan as well as planner, and they both said the same
All-
thing.
This is just
So
commercial,
we just want to make sure this is multifamily home and commercial.
five and greater.
It doesn't say that though.
Doesn't say 5 or greater,
It-
but however, if it does speak to a common amenity space.
Right.
You know, and certainly I think that, and Greer can comment on this, that it is not necessarily, or it could be interpreted as that it does not apply to single family homes, but I can't make that, I wouldn't necessarily make that interpretation without Greer or the planner speaking to that.
And that's what Graham spoke to us.
Right.
Yeah, that's what he said. It was commercial. It wasn't residential, it was commercial, 5 and greater. And that's where maybe the common
Maybe
amenity
as
space.
five.
Commercial or 5 or greater. So those are different.
Pardon? I didn't hear that.
Did you say commercial or 5 or greater?
It was
It's a
multifamily,
multifamily.
5 or greater, and
And we are
commercial.
saying 5 or greater because we have just done the loading and unloading and made that in there 5 and greater because that is for multifamily home. And that is what we are considering that is a multifamily home.
So it seems that there's, I think what Mayor Purpose was getting to is that the blanket provision here isn't meeting the intent. So I think it is worthwhile to go back and take a look at, where this can be a little bit more tailored. I mean, I think that as I'm hearing, there are areas where I think everybody does seem to agree that it should be prohibited, but there are other areas that may be, okay under certain circumstances, so that we can either do that it's approved if you meet, double your setbacks, or if you're not peering into your neighbors. I mean, we can write it with a little bit of more tailored approach and then add in something different for the resident, the single family, 2-family residential versus multifamily versus commercial, and have a little bit more of a tailored approach per each.
I don't have in
zoning
front of
type.
me. Alex, do you have a copy of what Graham sent us over today, please?
I believe it was on the dais. I don't have it in front of me. I believe it was on the dais.
This, the definition?
Whatever, the copy was left on your.
When I spoke with,
I don't have a copy of it, so I'd love to see that. Because based on what Sanjeev and I talked about, it was.
I didn't see anything that Graham sent over today.
I didn't see it. I just have what was in our packet.
it's my understanding from Graham, and we spoke at length about this today, that the last version he had sent, I think updated twice before it ended up in the way that it appears before you here.
Right, so maybe we could see those, because that all talked about multifamilies and commercial and 5 units and greater.
But if that's not what we have in front of us, how can we vote on this?
I can appreciate that.
And again, it's the same 5 of us up here next year, so there's really no harm in
Well,
tweaking it and bringing it
But if
back
we're
in
not talking
January.
about residential and we're just talking about commercial properties and multifamilies, 5 units and greater, I think it is important that we.
Mayor, could we take a 2-minute break while we're sorting this out?
Thank you. Thank you. Here, this is your.
Nope, that's exactly the same thing.
No, there was something to it. No, there was something else.
Oh, the
got it.
sale. Oh, I didn't quite catch the beginning of it, but you're welcome. Have a good
Thank
night.
you.
Happy holidays.
I know.
Wow.
I'll show you something. And none of them.
And I spoke, roll it down. So I started working on that.
Yeah, I just want to know what you guys, how you doing, how you doing?
And they all did. So no matter how. And I said, get up there and thank them, remind everybody. And work together.
How are you? Good to see you.
Yeah, I was trying to get up and just thank everybody.
Oh, that's
For
nice.
fixing Milburn Avenue.
Oh, okay.
I paid for all
Wow.
this and all paid
Well, that's
for
very
it.
kind.
So even though there's an enormous amount of potential.
Yes.
I-
See if you can hang out a little longer.
Yeah, I'm good till 10 and then I have to.
Thank you so much.
I don't think, and they go, I'll go home and I'll put it on Zoom. Okay, so you were volunteer? Okay, you were on.
Goes back.
Okay, right, so I'm on review. And I've been there since down the other end, on the last block, from the Taylor Park. Yes, and then you go left.
Oh, you're the last house?
Not the last house.
Okay, all right.
On 940.
Okay.
So I have to say this. I was living in town, I took a little, in 1999. When we had hurricane before. And hurricane before, never came so local. Came into town, came through it. My part, I have to, well, that's fine. I don't think I have. Oh, my God. All the way down.
All right, let's start the meeting. It is time. That is bizarre. It is bizarre. It's bizarre. Doesn't matter.
Right.
It's not okay.
So,
We're still missing that. She's in the back. She's got.
Know ahead of time with your deal, know that. Well, I mean, we haven't. You have to cut all the costs.
All right, we are here. Mr. McDonald, Mr. Falcon, let's keep our meeting moving. So where are we with this, Mr. McDonald? Are we still? We're still, all right. So does anybody else have any comments? Comments? Are you moving this? Where are we?
Well, what we wanted to do was, this all had to do with the commercial properties and the multifamilies 5 units and over, not discussing residential. So the way it was written and the way we saw it was use as common amenity space. So that led us to believe that that was the intent. Well, that was our intent. And that was the intent of this ordinance.
I also think that another potential solution for the township committee could be that if you do decide that you want to move forward with this ordinance, that you can resolve, as you had said before, that you are all going to be here next year, that you can resolve to make those additional carve outs. And, maybe, again, it had been expressed at previous meetings that there was a desire to make a ban of the commercial rooftop decks as well as multifamily residential in order to protect or, ascertain the goals that were intended there. You could pass the ordinance and then look to carve out those necessary pieces or have those discussions more thoroughly going forward. Because again, that is just another potential solution.
So you're saying that this could be voted on this evening and voted on at the end of the year. And then in January, if we chose to, as a committee, then do the carve-outs for the residential.
You could make amendments in any way that you see fit.
May I ask a question? Why are we doing that? Why don't we just do it right the first time? If we're going to carve it out a month from now, just table it, have Greer or topology rewrite it as you intended it to be read, and just wait. It's
Well,
not a
because-
crisis. Are there people waiting before planning board and board of adjustments who have applications that are worrisome?
I don't know that. I don't know that
So-
to be true.
Why, I just don't understand the emergent of doing an ordinance. It sets a precedent that we can start doing this when we feel something that there's three of us who really want. I think we should have procedure, which we discussed at the beginning of the year. You do not pass, especially important ordinances of non-emergent nature, in 2 consecutive meetings.
You clearly have the majority of it. What I'm not sure why we just don't wait, get it done right. Be explicit in our zoning ordinance. It's gonna pass.
Okay.
It's gonna
Gentlemen, what do you
pass.
think?
If you put it up for vote, I'm going to say yes, and we can make the change. If you put it on hold, fine by me. You have my support.
Okay,
I feel the same.
okay. Okay, so let's move it forward then.
Or you read, I move this ordinance.
Yep, thank you, Tim. Let me get my glasses on. I move that this ordinance be taken up and passed on first reading, and that the township clerk be authorized to have the ordinance published in accordance with law in the item, and for hearing and final passage on Tuesday, December 21st, 2021.
Is there a second? A roll call vote, please.
Ms. Miggins,
Yes.
Ms. Saul Eglo,
No,
Mr. Vinayak,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Wasserman, Mayor Prupus.
No. I present for
Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. I present for consideration an ordinance entitled Ordinance Number 2591-21, an ordinance authorizing the acquisition by purchase of 342 square foot easement over a portion of the real property located at 375 Hobart Avenue, known as Block 3302, Lot 7, and appropriating the sum of $2,100 to pay the cost thereof. This ordinance is being proposed to authorize the acquisition of a portion of the real property located at the corner of Hobart and Hobart Avenue and Hobart Gap Road in order to enable certain signal and related infrastructure improvements to be made to the intersection. Tonight is the time set for public hearing and final passage as advertised in accordance with law. I declare the hearing open. Is anybody here to make a comment?
I have a question. Oh, residents first?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. I'll ask afterwards.
Good evening. My name is Jeffrey Feld, 11 Alexander Lane, Short Hills, Jersey, which is part of the Hartshorn Poets section. It's my understanding this is to buy acquired land so you can put a traffic light where the blinking light is. Has there ever been a traffic study done as to what will be the impact of putting a light there, especially when you're coming off, I guess, Morris Avenue, when you make the left? Because it's not that long of an area, how backed up traffic will be going down that hill. And because these are not 2 lane, there is 2 lanes, not 2 lanes on one side, how backed up traffic will be if someone has to make a left turn, let's say going towards Summit, how will backed up traffic will be, with this, with these traffic lights. I mean, I live in the area. I'm not aware of any traffic study being done. And I don't know if my neighbors really know of the impact this will have on the values of the properties or that you're actually considering this. Because the way it appears, someone just sees things of just an easement, but they don't really understand what will be the impact and what the purpose is. And if there was a traffic study, I think the public should see this before you vote on it tonight.
Ed Mazer, Greenwood Drive in Milburn. First of all, I want to thank all of you for your service to the township. I would recommend the approval of this ordinance and the next one that both relate to the traffic light. To answer Mr. Feld's question as to whether or not there was a traffic study done, this is a copy of it dated April 10th, 2018, which shows that the traffic light would be justified under 4 criteria of traffic conventions, 8-hour traffic flows, 4-hour traffic flows, 1-hour peak traffic flow, and also the number of accidents at the intersection. The typical criteria is if there's more than 5 accidents in a 12-month period. In the last 5 years, there's been over 30 accidents in the intersection and at least another 8 rear-end accidents approaching the intersection. This is a very dangerous intersection and has been for many, many years. This is an intersection which technically is under the auspices of Essex County. Essex County declined to do anything with this intersection initially as far as doing traffic studies. And I want to specifically commend Alex for taking the lead and having a traffic study done, which clearly showed the need for this. And the next ordinance relates to the taking of land that's necessary for a turning lane, which will improve the traffic flow on White Oak Ridge Road and I think, enhance certainly the safety and also the traffic flow in that area. Thank you.
Thank
you. Jean Pasternak, 342 Hobart. So I'm very close to this intersection. I've lived there 25 years. I've had a lot of experience coming in and out, both morning, noon, night, middle of the night. I am all for improving safety, but I do believe that there hasn't been, as far as I know, and being such a close neighbor, any studies other than what Mr. Mazer just referred to that I had no awareness of until he just mentioned it. I believe that the neighbors should be made aware of the impacts of putting a traffic signal there. What's going to happen with the air quality? What's going to happen with the noise levels? What's going to happen with safety, of course. I have experience for years, especially in the winter, a lot of pollution that comes from cars backing up there, especially during the school hours and at rush hour. It's very, the fumes are disgusting. And there's a lot of, school bus stop there on several different directions. Over the years, it changes, but there's definitely school bus stops there that should be considered. So I don't know what this study contains. I haven't seen it. I've heard his reference. I don't know who did it, how legitimate it is, but I think we should have one up to date, and we should also consider air pollution. We should also consider noise pollution. Thank you very much.
Are there any other public comments to this?
Is this only public comment about
This specific ordinance? Yes. Any comments from the committee?
So, Mayor, this has been on the radar for a few years now, and we have been asked, where were we? And we have asked Mr. McDonald, where are we? traffic study was done, but it was at a halt, that there were things that were being done on how to take over the port or intersection to put the traffic light there. And as are other residents, even I take the road to go to work. So I'm very familiar with that as well. As far as backing up the traffic goes, I think I understand that concern, but the way the accident had happened there, and unfortunately, even I had kind of seen a couple, the way if you back up the traffic and the safety is there, again, totally my take on it. I would rather take that than actually having an accident. But yeah, I hear the residents' concern, but this has been going on for years now, and I have been asking or following up on for almost a year on this project. And thank you for getting this to completion.
I also would echo your sentiments. I'm a 30-year resident of the township. That intersection has always been dangerous, and I know people who have been hurt, at that intersection. And I think we all have the concern about keeping traffic moving, but that is a very dangerous intersection, and I think this is something that we should move ahead with.
Any other comments, questions?
I was just going to ask what the timeline is after this is approved.
Sure. So just to also be clear, we have had discussions with the county, and we had discussions with all the residents, obviously, to obtain these easements. We will also be doing some screening of the properties and the traffic signal equipment for those properties. We've confirmed with the county that this is on their radar, and they're ready to start in the spring once they have these documents. So.
That's great.
Is there anything else that you would like to address that was made in public comment at all?
No, I think Mr. Mazur answered the questions pretty well.
Okay. So I move that this public hearing be closed and the ordinance be adopted on final reading, and the township clerk be directed to publish the ordinance by title as passed on final reading in accordance with law. Is there a second?
Second.
Can I have a roll call vote, please?
Ms. Miggins,
Yes.
Ms. Eglo,
Yes.
Mr. Vinayak,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Wasserman, Mayor Prupus.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Miggins is scheduled to sponsor ordinance 2592-20.
Yes. I present for consideration an ordinance entitled Ordinance Number 2592-21, an ordinance authorizing the acquisition by purchase of a 2,161 square foot portion of the real property located at 375 Hobart Avenue, known as Block 3302, Lot 7, and appropriating the sum of $72,900 to pay the costs thereof. Well, the purpose of this, this ordinance is being proposed to authorize the acquisition of a portion of the real property located at the corner of Hobart Avenue and Hobart Gap Road in order to enable certain signal and related infrastructure improvements to be made to the intersection.
And then tonight.
You do that now. Tonight is the time to set. Tonight is a time set for the public hearing and final passage as advertised in accordance with law.
I declare the hearing open. Is there anybody here to make a public comment? Anybody on the committee? Okay, you.
I move that this public hearing be closed and the ordinance be adopted on final reading, and that the township clerk be directed to publish the ordinance by title as passed on final reading in accordance with law.
May I have a second, please?
Second.
And roll call vote?
Ms. Miggins,
Yes?
Ms. Eglo,
Yes.
Mr. Vinayak,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Wasserman, Mayor Prupus.
Yes. On to old business. The first topic is the Mayor's Council for the Rahway River watershed for the flood control. So I just want to bring the committee up to speed on the work that's been being done and what's been discussed post Ida, the mayors have decided that they want to take a different route. And instead of paying a lobbyist firm in DC, they want to take that money and give it to John Rushke to further engineer and study the consensus plan that was approved by the 7 towns in the council and Orange, because the plan is at the recreational complex center, which Orange owns, and the county. The mayors have all agreed to this approach. We have a meeting with Essex County and Orange, and Mayor Prunty is really taking the charge in Cranford, and Mayor Frank from Maplewood to have this meeting to see if we proposed a joint flood commission between Essex and Union County. If the consensus plan is to ever occur, somebody's going to need to operate it. And this is why the idea that there needs a commission between the 2 counties. Just got heard today that Essex County is not yet ready they want more information and more discussions to be had before they create this joint flood commission with Union County. So more meetings are occurring. I was hoping to kind of have a little bit more of this work completed to say, yes, there's going to be a joint flood commission and we can move forward with the further study of the consensus plan from John Rushke, but we're not there yet. One of my concerns is that if Essex County doesn't say that they support this and want to move forward with this, but we keep spending money, because every year we've been spending $20,000 to this Rahway River Council, and it really hasn't. I don't want to say it hasn't gotten us anywhere, because it's gotten us to a lot of no's. So there's been a lot of conversation and a lot of exploration. So at this point, maybe at the next meeting there'll be more, and then whoever takes that up next year, another kind of big change. There's been consensus among the mayors for Mr. McDonald to kind of take up this lead. So Alex and I has been in every single meeting with me, at every single conversation, in terms of moving this regional and local approach to flood mitigation forward, as it relates to the downstream communities. So we'll see what happens. And I wanted to say that come to you so that there's going to be a change in the contract, and that we should be spending this money here, but I'm not sure yet. I'm not really sure, and I don't know. I think we really need a commitment from the county before we pay John Rushke to do any more studying on something if they're not interested in it. So that's all happening, and it will continue to happen. But I just wanted to give an update.
Can I ask
Do
you
you
a
have
question?
questions?
Yeah, so John Reschke is from Mott McDonald, correct?
Yes.
So this would be on top of the contract that was approved for his firm.
Yes, and just John Rushke, the night, it was interesting, the night that we approved the last meeting, Cranford also approved a contract with John Rushke, so they are working very closely with him as well. Yes.
So why would those 2 contracts not give him what he needs to?
Because as it's set up now, he's not studying the consensus plan and the bypass that he created with the mayor's council. And the majority of the money, the 75,000 budget for the Broadway River Mayor's Council, 70 has been spent on winning strategies.
Well, I agree with, definitely,
So that's
yeah, that is an
I mean,
agreement.
that should not.
Right.
I've also been in touch with Malinowski's rep, Ian Gray down there because I'm trying to figure out. We have $700,000 allocated. You were part of all this when they, in 2019, were you part of that? In 2019, the federal government allocated $700,000 to the Army Corps of Engineers to study this. And the mayor's had a meeting with the commissioner of the DEP who said the Army Corps of Engineers doesn't want to further study the consensus plan because it's based on human forecasting. They just say, we said, okay, but can we get a meeting with the Army Corps of Engineers? Like that, it's just, everything's moving so slowly. And I don't know if it's ever gonna move. But I do know giving $70,000, $16,000 to a lobbying firm in DC is nothing I want to sign off on anymore at this point. So that's all the information I have at this point. Do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think you summed it up well, Mayor.
Okay,
Can I just ask you another question? Is there an equivalent lobbyist firm in New Jersey that would bring this to Trenton? Or you don't need
So-
that?
No, I mean, it's possible. There are lobbying firms in Trenton. So our Assemblyman McKeon is well aware of all of these conversations. I think it's really just getting the county to commit one way or another. And if they say this is not something that we're gonna sign on to, then that's fine. But then we need to then stop having this conversation that we've been having. But I'm not, or what more information do they need to make a decision? Because they're just saying we need more information. So, and to be fair, we just brought this joint flood commission to them. I mean, it's something that's been talked about for a while. So there is movement there, but everything is just happening a lot slower than I would like to see happen.
Do you know if Union County agreed to it yet or no?
So, and Bruce Bergen, who's the attorney for Union County, is the one who's like writing it all up. So they're on board and they're proposing it. So that is all occurring there. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. The proposal for two-way traffic circulation design for Milburn Avenue and Essex Street. When Kyle and I were here, we all asked for more information in terms of wanting to know what the larger, there were a lot of questions that we'd asked, but also what the larger cost of this project would be if we saw it to completion. And Committeeman Vinaya, you've been a part of all this, so please jump in at any time. The subcommittee met with Collars. They came back with a proposal that I think you've all seen. Part of that proposal, the first task was doing a survey. We have that information, or we have some of that information. So we had the subcommittee meeting and we asked them if they were to could they take out that part of it to bring down the costs? And we were hoping to have the new proposal tonight, and they didn't have it ready for us. So it's on here because wanted to kind of get the pulse of the committee, but we don't have that proposal. So maybe we want to wait to talk about it until we have the right proposal. Do you have anything else to add to that?
No, I think you summed it up right. I said that in the subcommittee meeting as well. There are multiple different new projects that have been pushed on us as a township. And there are some projects that we don't have options on, like the DPW side building 75 units that has been mandated to make it. Then we had flood mitigation that we should spend on. So we need to pick up our priorities. We don't have unlimited amount of money in township to keep putting in all the projects, but I totally agree with, we should wait for them to come back with the project and what the cost will be. And that is only after the study gets done. And the study cost was $143,000 or $48,000, $148,000. But the biggest spend on that was survey. And we have the survey or part of the survey, as you mentioned. So if that gets out of it, it is more controllable that we can spend on the study to understand what the two-way traffic project will look like. I don't want to commit on a project where it's another millions of dollars. So, and we have to see what it comes back and maybe prioritize our projects going forward.
I'm also wondering, and this isn't really something we talked about, but we are going to have many developments coming into town. And I'm not even sure that we've talked about all those developments within this proposal or what it would mean, if it would help or if it would hurt with, you know, all the additional cars that are going to be in our town. So I think as we move forward, just something to think about.
You know, this project, at least talking on this two-way circular traffic, made us very close to county engineers. And those are the engineers we're also using for our flood mitigation. And they've been very receptive and were able to come here, walk with us, help us through and through. So that those relationships were made while going through the two-way circular traffic, even though, and they are all for it. Whatever we want to do, they will do it for us in this two-way circular traffic as well as flood mitigation.
Are going to support us.
Right.
I just have one comment. I know that, you know, it came up in discussion at one point that there were other towns that had done exactly this, you know, like Rahway and I think Hackensack. And I'm just wondering whether that, after the fact, whether there's any information we could glean from, you know, from them having done it, you know, whether we could learn anything from their history.
I think that's a good point, but as you've seen here in our own township, when we do something, there are 5 people here standing saying no and 5 people saying yes. So similarly on those towns also, there will be towns that will say, hey, great project. Some people will say bad project. So I think we have to just go there, make sure we do our due diligence and put in our best effort to go with the project or stop the project.
Right. I just think that we just have to be critical and make sure that we're going to get what we pay for.
And I would say that there's this conversation and project there is not being rushed. We're just, I mean, there's no urgency to it. And we'll just kind of keep slowly looking at all the different steps. Okay. The proposed concept plan of 11 Main Street. I think we've had a lot of conversation tonight about that. Just gonna say I'd really like an information session about it for people. I don't know if there's questions at this point. I think that it's the idea that we wanted to make sure, we wanted everyone on the committee to see it. It is going to Fair Share. Do we have a date of when Beth is submitting that?
I think if she gets, you know, this sort of consensus, it'll be this week. It'll be the end of this week. Yeah. That's what she's looking for in terms of that conceptual plan.
Has everyone seen the conceptual plan?
It was shown here.
Right. And were there any?
I'd
I'm
say.
trying to think of it. There's been no changes to the.
Well, I put in 2 of my comments in there, where one was the height of the building.
That,
And the second one was, yes, we can go green, but we cannot be going over our budget that we have discussed. So within that budget, whatever we can do, we should.
But we don't have a budget.
Well, $3 to $5 million is our spend. Is what
I don't think we can commit to that.
That's not in this conceptual plan. The conceptual plan is the footprint, you know, your point about the existing DPW facility and also the height, that type of stuff.
In other words, when you retain a developer at some point,
then you're going to start talking about
But this, you know, when we're saying 3 to 5 million, we're just kind of like, I mean, we have nothing to back that up at this point. I would just be very careful in throwing out a number like that at this stage in the game.
Well, we got that number. just,
It's kind of a little
Yeah,
confusing because before this even started, there was a gentleman who did this same thing in Morristown.
Madison,
And-
right?
Madison.
Madison.
Yeah, we
Madison,
had,
okay.
yeah,
So
we had
and-
some modeling. We had that number actually comes from a gentleman that did this in Madison and did some, did some modeling, financial modeling. It wasn't an exact number, but that's what we were led to believe.
And I believe we should have that number with us because this is a big amount. And taking bond, and even though we keep signing bond, we are not generally taking the bond other than the parking and the complete street project. And maybe I'm missing some. Even though we sign it, we actually put money out from our own money. We don't go out and put a note or bond there. So this money, even if we go take a loan from outside, we are still going to pay that back. So we want to be very cautious of how much we spend. And based on this and flood mitigation, those are the two important priority for 2022. We need to just prioritize our projects.
Right, but Alex, are you like secure in saying that this is gonna cost the township 3 to 5 million?
I don't think we can, I think that is what the projection has been at this point. And there's no reason to believe that it'll stray far from that, but that's why everybody's giving a range. So, it's not, to me, it depends, a lot depends on what kind of tax credits you take, a lot depends on any supplemental funding or anything like that. So, I think you're correct, Mayor. We do have to be careful about throwing the number out there, but I think that Deputy Mayor Wasserman and Committeeman Benayak are not, far off from what they're saying at this point in time with what we understand as the
Without
assumptions to
knowing
be.
what the environmental remediation.
Right. And I think that, and again, I just want everybody to keep in mind, this discussion is really about, hey, there's a conceptual plan, the picture of what's being presented to Fair Share Housing. Is the committee comfortable and do you consent to that being presented to Fair Share Housing as quickly as possible so that we can get that determination prior to the end of the year?
So is there consensus around that?
Yes.
Yes. I mean, for me.
Well, I know you, I'm just making, you're good? All right, so it looks like there's a majority of consent. Committeewoman Eglo, how are you doing down there?
I'm not going to comment on it.
Yeah.
I had nothing to do with it. It was Ms. Miggins and Mr. Wasserman's baby, so I'm going to just let them take it.
All right, I'm not so comfortable with the concept plan. I understand the constraints that we are under. I wish there could have been so many other conversations around this, which also leads me to the next conversation, the next full business, which is the DPW site use and options. So,
Mayor, weren't you the part of the concept plan? I thought you were the one who actually requested them to come and show it to us.
yeah, aren't you glad you got to see it? What do you mean? Am I part of it?
Because you just said you're not
I'm not.
comfortable with the
I'm not
concept
comfortable with
plan.
anything about it.
I thought that came from you and Maggie.
I mean, Jorge drew it up. I didn't say one way or the other. I
But
just
you
sat.
two are the one liaison to that committee.
But what does that have to do with my comfort level?
Well,
Committeeman
if you're
Benayak?
not comfortable, you could actually tell them otherwise, and it wouldn't even come out of the subcommittee.
I'm not comfortable with the entire concept of it. I don't think it should be a purely 100% affordable housing.
Oh, that part, yes. Okay,
Yeah.
that.
This
that-
concept
there's
plan, I'm
something-
not really, I mean, the concept plan is so conceptual that this is not what we're gonna get. No developer is gonna come in and build that for us. And again, I'm just really, I cannot believe we haven't had conversation with our larger community about this. So I want to bring this into question or topic number 4, which is the DPW site use and options. I think that part of the DPW, as it exists right now, if this is to go forward, is going to have to be moved. We've floated around some ideas of bringing it up to JFK. I know that there's been some internal conversations about what the DPW program is, what it needs to be. I agree with you that I do not want to build a new DPW building on that existing site. That isn't, I'm not okay with.
Right.
I do think that I don't want the 100% solely affordable piece there as it is conceptualized. Some of those pieces are gonna have to be moved. And I want there to be public conversation, people talking about where those pieces of the DPW are gonna go, what all of our options are in terms of keeping the existing DPW there. If we were to break it up and move the operation to other areas, what else could go there? Could we use the land to use that for money to build the other new pieces of the DPW site that have to happen there? I just think there's a lot of moving pieces, and I would like people to talk about it and for us to see options so that we are educated on what is happening, so that we're not just like playing catch up and being forced to do all this stuff because of time constraints and time limits, and we don't know, we never had the conversation. So I'm just proposing that our planner and perhaps some of you people on the committee would like to look at the different options to bring back to the township committee to talk about how we could proceed with that, the entire DPW site and the operation. Because we're gonna have to make decisions. Where's the fuel pumps gonna go? What's gonna happen to the salt dome? Like, we need to talk about this stuff.
So we had discussed a little bit before when we talked about JFK Expressway project, when it all came about, there will be a cell tower there. And then there is a section that we will use for DPW parking spot, including the salt dome. We had a concept plan also in front of us or was sent to us. And the left side was going to be the turf field or field.
And the salt dome was
baseball.
put up there
Yes.
as well.
Yes.
And the fuel pumps.
No fuel.
No fuel pump. It was salt dome. So on the right side, if you go to the leaf compost side, right side was going to be the cell tower as well as salt dome along with the parking area. On the left side was going to be the field and the parking area around the field. Those were the concept plan. And that is what we had discussed here.
And so when flooding happens and if JFK, and what trucks are gonna be kept up there? And how are,
And
I
then
mean,
great
these are big
question. All I'm
questions
saying
that we
is
don't have
no.
answers to. So
I'm not saying what you said is off. No, that is a great question. I'm just trying to say, when we discussed the JFK Expressway site,
It's a possible potential site that's being explored, but I think that we need to explore other sites and do you see
yeah,
that? I mean, if nobody else on the committee thinks that we should look at that and what the DPW program is going to be need in the next 10 years of our community. I mean, I think it's a worthwhile discussion and I would like to see some options in terms of what's possible. And Fair Share might come back and say, sorry, but that plan is too close to the DPW. I mean, and then you might have to go up in height. There's a lot of variables here. So I would just like for someone to be looking at the different possibilities.
maybe first plan comes from the DPW director and with the planner of the least. The thing is where this site is coming, where again, based on the concept plan that I saw.
Right, one other thing that just the environmental piece, we're still waiting on that too. So that is going to play some
No, which again, if
point.
based on the concept plan that I saw was about 2 acre space or a little less than that, about acre and a half, including the parking spot outside. And it was going not closer to the building, it was a little away from the building. And that's where all the trucks are parked and the salt dome is there.
No,
In the last 10 years, I don't know how much DPW has grown. When we talk about next 10 years, again, we have to just look into what is the best possible way of moving with the least destructive
Great,
manner.
so you're agreeing with me.
Absolutely,
Great.
absolutely.
So
Wait,
does anyone else have any?
What happened to the move the dump committee? Wasn't that like a 1 or 2 year study? What did it
Well, that
talk
was
about?
the redevelopment
Yeah.
of the DPW. And we
Mhm.
got as far as that piece of property needed to be included in the settlement.
But did they find places that were realistically suitable to move
Oh, you mean that prior committee that
that
had been like,
under Jackie?
right, there, Well, they looked at the JFK site,
And what did they determine?
that it wasn't perfect.
Right,
And
and
that
it would
was
be
gonna cost
millions.
money.
Yeah,
right,
millions.
A lot of money
Yeah.
to even make that accessible up there. I mean, you need a
Right.
traffic light and there were flooding issues. I mean, there were a lot of issues. It didn't get very far. I mean,
And those
we're
same
talking very
issues,
highly conceptual right now.
right, and those same issues will exist if you want to put a field up there. So I think it's, right, I think there should be, if you want to, whoever's going to be in charge next year, start a subcommittee to make a realistic investigation into what can go there and where the dump could go.
The other thing I was gonna mention is that, Alex, when are we gonna have clarity from Fair Share in terms of the timeframe, in terms of the conceptual plans?
The sooner we get it to them, the sooner that we'll have some clarity.
So one of the things that we're waiting for is feedback and approval from Fair Share on the concept plan, which will give us, an idea of the footprint and what's gonna happen. So I think that's what we were waiting for next.
And also, just so you know, Fair Share is the one who insisted on us developing our dump.
Right.
It was the Fair Share people.
Yeah.
They wanted us to develop it.
And we had no choice.
We had no choice.
We had no choice.
So if.
Yeah, I would like to say that you could think that you had no choice.
You didn't have a
It's
choice.
perceived as not having a choice. And
We were in the meetings.
You didn't have a choice.
so I would like to see some options and configurations and ideas in terms of, we can wait till we get some feedback from Fair Share Housing. But I think you have to. Yes, well, or you can also, somebody can start looking at land or possible solutions or where are we gonna put the fuel pumps?
So again, Mayor, I think you bring up a lot of really salient points about, where this is going. My suggestion would be that there is some clarity that's needed, and there's also been some work done in terms of where different things may move on that property. But my suggestion would be to engage our planner in from topology and doing some more specific site studies and searches of properties in the township. And even things that we don't necessarily think of immediately because it's occupied or it's some other, type of constraint that, we've been down that road or gone through that in some way, shape or form. You do have the study at JFK. There are solutions up there that can be brought about. However, it is not, if there is more desire at that site, then there is more work to be done. And I think,
What do you mean more desires?
like if you don't want DPW in its current operation to be there in any way, shape or form, or if there's other areas of the operation that you want to move, then you have to find other spaces too. I think to your point.
Why would we do that?
Maybe
It's an expensive project. We have the building here, we have everything here.
I'm only stating storage of vehicles, different things like that, materials that we use for construction and different things.
Not everything can go there.
Yeah.
But didn't they do an inventory of what had to stay there?
They have.
Didn't I see a report that, this is what has to stay here and it wasn't this recently done?
Yeah, they've done some work in preliminarily to say this is what needs to stay there in terms of certain equipment and the fuel pumps. But there's a lot of other uses of that yard that are being put out or relocated or whatnot, different storage materials, e-cycling, type 13 waste, plow storage, salt storage, all that stuff. There's more to be thought about here in terms of, so I think there's a degree of having topology do some work there and lay out some options, because they'll be able to tell you too, hey, JFK is this and you can use it for this or that, and you're going to have environmental control, whatever it might be. But there is going to be a time where we are going to make a decision to move things, and we better have a place to put it.
But we'll have clear.
Does JFK, do we know that it's do we know how much money it will cost to build a field up there?
No, you have a buildable area up there.
We have
And now
No, we know that we can. do it. Is that what you're
Correct.
saying? But
Yes.
we have no idea what that would cost. Do you have a ballpark?
I think there is a ballpark. Yeah, it was provided.
Send a report
Yes.
out too.
So what was the ballpark?
What was that, about 1.5?
Yeah.
Including everything?
Yeah, I can recirculate that to the township committee, but there's some geo work that needs to be up there because of the organic material, but that's been there for years, but there, you know, that's been estimated out, and I can recirculate that to the township committee.
Can I ask you a question? How can it be 1.5 when converting an existing library field to turf was 1 million?
I think we're just throwing a number out.
But let's
What do
be
you mean we're just
real.
throwing a
Yeah, come on, you
number
gotta be
out?
realistic.
I didn't throw-
1.5, you can't just throw a number out.
I did not throw a number out.
Probably just see the number that he sends you, it will be probably more than what it is, what I'm saying.
didn't-
Well,
Because,
just,
and
it
you will
was,
see the detail there, and it's already been
it was $1
circulated earlier.
million
How
to,
much was it?
yeah.
What was it?
There is
I'm
a
saying
report that I
approximately
will
1.5.
recirculate to the township committee. Anybody throwing out numbers at this point are only
not
guessing.
Okay.
Can you also recirculate what the DPW says have to stay down in that area? Because I've never seen that either.
Sure.
I haven't seen a lot of things.
Okay, you have some direction, Mr. McDonald?
I do.
Okay. On to, does anybody have any committee members have any business, old business they would like to discuss that to make the agenda? Okay. New business, securing of accessory structures during storms. So I put this on here. I've spoken to Mr. McDonald about it. Whatever we could do to prevent dumpsters and cars from going into the river needs to happen. And if that needs to happen by ordinance, then we need to have this happen by ordinance. So I know you've been working on it. Do you want to let us?
Yeah, so I think, you know, there's certainly the potential for a legislative part of that, but I think certainly the all-encompassing, more effective solution in the immediacy is we are looking at putting up a guardrail or potentially bollard. Guardrail is an easier and more cost-effective solution. We are just seeking what the base flood elevation and height of that guardrail would need to be, but it would protect the river from being impacted by dumpsters, by cars, by other debris as well. Instead of having like a fence, which there was a portion of that area that had a fence behind the standard, which got washed in the river as well. So these would be, you know, obviously, you know, cemented in guardrail, but at a height that is appropriate based on the base flood elevation. So we're just waiting for one piece of information from engineering, and then we'll be able to work toward that, to put a solution there in the immediate sort of near future.
And Mr. McDonald, we've also discussed the fire department enforcing, you know, our parking laws that, you know, behind in that section, a lot of people that park illegally. And I think that they have also been monitoring that a lot more closely from what I understand.
They have been, but the general concern back there is that there are several dumpsters from several different commercial
I'm saying in
properties.
addition to that, you're absolutely right. The dumpsters are all over the place, and it's a disaster. It's a disaster waiting to happen unless we take
It
some
did
action.
happen. The disaster happened.
I know, and it could happen again.
So who would pay for that? The town or the
It's on town
standard?
property.
What?
It's on town
It's on
property.
town, okay, it's not like, so the standard has their dumpster on town property?
Some of them do, yeah.
Is that how it's supposed to be?
I mean, it's a difficult situation back there. You have a lot of different operating commercial properties in that, you know, should they have that there all the time? No, but you have a dumpster that comes, you know, a garbage company that comes, picks it up, they drop it, it might be there, whether they push it back onto their property past that little line in the sand, so to speak. I don't know. But we're not.
Wait, hold on. Wait. Please do not call out from the.
So anyway, the idea is that the enforcement of that property, as well as you know, being able to put up some sort of barrier from them.
So if they're gonna, I'm sorry, if they're gonna enforce cars parking, they gotta enforce the dumpsters not being on
And we've-
township property.
And we've been in constant, and we've been in communication with Livreds and the other commercial properties like the Standard and Sumramen and things like that over there.
So the guardrail, when can we expect it to be up?
So I think realistically, weather permitting, you can expect that to be up in mid-January, depending on the weather. But I think part of it too is, we want to, make sure that we get it in right. So, but I will keep the committee posted on the progress of that because we've already gotten the quote for it and we're just waiting on the height at which we should be putting it.
And in terms of the dumpsters, right now, we are dealing with it by enforcement.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Dave, Como, code enforcement, as well as the fire department are in consistent sort of communication and checking back there.
All right, thank you. Does any other committee members have any other items of new business to address tonight? Okay, it's now time for public comment. Please come up to the podium, state your name, your address. Please be respectful of the time, our 3-minute time allotment.
Hello, I'm Fran Feld. I haven't been up here since before COVID. I live at 948 Ridgewood Road. I've been there since 1983. Just to throw that in there. I'm here for one reason tonight, up here, is to thank all of you for helping get rid of the mess on Millburn Avenue. That's part of the complete streets. I started to get involved with township issues after I retired in 2018, and I saw what happened to the street. I had no idea what happened. I think it's a function of the public not being well educated about something that was going on. It was a surprise to me, and I started to get very active. And I think I worked pretty hard on some of your campaigns to make sure that we turned the board over. I call it the board, but the township committee. So let me just wrap it up by thanking all of you for putting the street back to be a normal street with curbs. And I'm thrilled, and so are most of the people I talk to. So thank you again publicly.
Thank you.
Janet Pizar, 186 Main Street. I'd like to address the issue of the two-way traffic circulation in town. And I have been out of the loop, and I have to confess that I've been very ignorant about the catalyst for why this happened. And I would like to know two things when I'm done speaking, and that is the catalyst behind it and also what the charge was to the consultants. One thing I'd like to know is, do these consultants know the history in Milburn as to the various changes that were made in traffic patterns? And I'm going to cite the greatest consideration was a study over 3 years that showed 143 vehicle pedestrian collisions, 143 in the intersection of Milburn Avenue and Main Street and Essex Street and Main Street was identified as being the hotspots in the downtown. And that's why the perpendicular turns were prohibited. And what we've learned since then is that the collisions of motor vehicles and pedestrians dropped. However, when the traffic was diverted east on Milburn Avenue with the left-hand turn onto Lackawanna to make the turn back on to come back to the town, the vehicle pedestrian collisions increased. So it seems to indicate that the more opportunities there are, the greater the probability is. So it seemed, I was at the meeting about 5 or 6 weeks ago when the consultants spoke and were very much in favor of the two-way traffic pattern change. They cited the more of a downtown feel because of the two-way streets, and also that it would be a safety feature because two-way traffic won't travel as quickly as one-way traffic stream. And they seem to indicate that they are going to reinstitute the perpendicular turns where we have prohibited them because of the very high collisions that occurred at those sites. The other thing is when you're talking about two-way traffic patterns again, you are doubling the probability because now you have a left-hand turn from Essex onto Main Street and a right-hand turn from Essex onto Main Street. And the same thing with Milburn Avenue. You're creating more probability, which seems not to be what we want. The other thing is, it seemed to me that if we really want pedestrian safety, that what needed to happen was a side-by-side comparative study. What do we gain? What do we lose? What is the implication for pedestrian safety in the downtown? So could I ask, what was the catalyst?
Thank you, Ms. Pizarro. The way we operate is at the end of the meeting, we will respond to all the questions.
Very good, thank you.
Yeah.
Good evening. My name is Jeffrey Feld, 11 Alexander Lane. First, I give a shout out to this paper mill. If you have a chance, go on a date. I took my wife on a date. Everyone, doesn't matter what age, go see performers perform who haven't performed in a year and a half, and you'll see how jazzed they are. I sent you Livingston's agenda to compare, where the public's giving 2 chances. For about 92 hours and 30 minutes, you forgot about something about sovereignty. We, the people, we're entitled to information. You heard about the dump. You had a fight about the DPW. I'm looking at resolution 21-323. What you said you adopted is not what the words say. You said this was going out to the 4 people that were going out for RFPs. This looks like it's going out to the public, it's being published in the Milburn item. That's what the words say. I think the public should know of the 10, who are the 4 finalists. We should know who those developers are, especially because of my history with many of them. Before about the traffic report, I asked an Oprah request. I wouldn't have asked the question if I received a response to my Oprah request. So you make me look like a fool, but you guys did not comply with the law about Oprah. Bill list, there's an appropriation. You're increasing the amount of legal fees by $200,000. At the same time, you approved today a bill list where you paid this municipal attorney for legal work where the state rejected it regarding the first $220,000 appropriation. You're paying him for litigation, in my case, that he's no longer the attorney for. What is going on here? Where's the fiscal responsibility? As to Bocconi, the lawsuit was filed, verified complaint, on November 19th. The order show cause was entered on November 29th. On the face of the order show cause, it does not appear that the city appeared, the township appeared. Why aren't you protecting my rights and everyone in this room? A temporary restraint is an extraordinary remedy, especially when the presumption is that the zoning board did something correct. What is going on here? I talked about the DPW sub. You're going to talk about this conceptual plan. Please post it so the public can start seeing it. We heard about JFK. Why are we hearing all these numbers and proposals? Why aren't we also seeing it? Because at some point you're coming out of our pocket. Question, you keep on saying that the Fair Share Housing Center is the driving force here. All they had to do was figure out what was their possible development sites. They can't tell you how to do it. That belongs to your discretion. They don't dictate. What about the surface lot that's Rembeck? No one's talked about that. That's a surface lot. Why are we developing that? Why are we going to DPW if you have a site that's already owned by the township? As to the library field development, we should have seen the contract, because what happens if they don't pay? I hear about everyone being these fiscal guys. Where's the present value of $100,000 paid over 10 years when we had to pay bonds to do this work? We didn't really talk about that. And also the consent. It says based on the resolution in the ordinance that the property is jointly owned by the Board of Education. Where was their written consent to what you were doing? These are little questions, but we, the people, are entitled to answers. We don't get answers here. There's 2 other places we go, to the state executive branch and to the judiciary. By the way, have a great holiday.
Thank you, Mr. Bell.
Good evening, Josh Ryder, 27 Parkview Drive. I'm actually here in 2 capacities. first capacity, I am the president of Millburn Soccer Club, and I'm here to thank you for putting up the lights at the library field. It's necessary. I've served on that board for a better part of 8 years. I've been the president for the last 3. I can tell you with over 500 members, we need it. So thank you for approving the lights. And on that note, as we talk about the field at the JFK site, consider it. We need it. I'm telling you, the kids need a place to play. All right, so that's for me. Now, personally, two-way traffic in town. I am extremely encouraged by what you said, that you're going to slow down looking at two-way traffic in town. It needs to be thought about that for the last 2 years, any traffic study that's been done has not considered the fact that most people have been in their house. So you have to think about and wait till things get a little more normal and traffic is a little more normal before we start considering two-way traffic in town. Being at Parkview Drive, I'm dramatically affected by it, but I think for everybody, I was very encouraged by the idea of slowing it down. So as slow as you want to go, you will have my support. Happy holidays. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Perry Urso, 514 Milburn Avenue in Short Hills. So what's all that noise about? Number one, years back, Mr. Gordon agreed that there was a safety issue, so he granted speed bumps on Jarvis Lane at Lot 14. The county agreed that there was a safety issue between Morris and Short Hills Avenue and provided a crosswalk on Milburn Avenue and Campbell Road. And lastly, still pending is a 15-minute sanction at 514 Milburn Avenue. So please know that in the meantime, for safety purposes, I will be placing our curbside pickup sign and cones until the traffic department follows up with Mr. McDonald's request from October 15th, 2021. It's obvious that we are not getting preferential treatment, retaliated by elected officials and township departments. Funny how potential tenants are required to go to certain planning and zoning boards where several other property owners are getting a pass. We are not seeking any deviation from the rules, but rather the same rules of law for all. We have witnessed the Wild West and continue the lack of law-abiding individuals on Upper Milburn Avenue and throughout the township. Number two, since 2018, this gentleman's firm has been paid to date $1,842,337.15, well over the approved retention caps in 2018, 2019, 2020, this firm was awarded a $100,000 cap and was paid over the approved retention without prior approvals to increase. 2021, this firm was awarded $450,000 with an increase of an additional $100,000, adding up totally for these years, $850,000. And you're approving payments for for services that the state has rejected. So where did the additional $1 million go? And do not blame Bear Properties for these excess charges. And I'm also concerned why this firm is getting paid for litigation for Bear Property Management when the Special Improvement District already has their own attorney. Number three, how much was paid for the flex parking removal, which the mayor promised in December 2018 she wouldn't vote for and did? This same mayor in 2018 threatened individuals for poor service and advocated for the dissolution of the then DMDA. In August of 2020, this mayor voted for the newly expanded 5-district SID. You are only fooling yourselves that she would not have any benefit. Have you yet to seen opinions from this overpaid attorney? Have you seen this mayor's campaign flyers? But we all know IDA funds were available to this mayor. We all know because she stated that she opted not to receive any grant monies, unlike her surrounding neighbors. These monies, which were distributed by Mr. Grillo, should be carefully looked at, and that's not a threat. Since the inception of the newly expanded 5-district SID, Explore Milburn has not fairly represented all districts. Since the mayor being in office, she too has changed her mind. Makes you wonder what's going on behind closed doors. When are you going to tell the taxpayers how much? By way of Oprah, I am in receipt of last year's anticipated assessment based on a 2018 budget. On November 18th, 2021, I once again emailed our township tax assessor, tax collector, and CFO, requesting the upcoming 2020 assessments to the commercial property owners,
which 4 districts of the expanded SID will subsidizing District 1. Lastly, 4, and thank you for the courtesy, all of you have approved $1 million overpayments to the township attorney, over $200,000 for the SID, and more than half of that amount is going to salaries, flex parking removal, and so much more. But you cannot afford the township, its local news channel for an annual range of anywhere from $30,000 to $40,000 a year. Let's be mindful that these fees are collected by the township and added to a general fund, which is funded by the subscribers through the collection of finance fees from Comcast and Fios. Amount received today by way of Oprah was $264,000, $366.40. Additionally, there's a current surplus of nearly $8 million and climbing by the end of the year. This would keep your constituents informed. Makes you wonder, what are you hiding? Thank you and have a wonderful holiday season. Good night.
Thank you, Ms. Urso. Anyone else would like to make a public comment?
Jean Pasternak, 342 Hobart Ave. I found it pretty astounding to listen to the conversation about live breads, the standard, the dumpsters and the cars, and no summons and no enforcement. But yet, the Stones, the Pasternaks, and the Ursos all got warnings and summons for really. It's just pretty incredible. It really is. Anyway, I hope the enforcement will be a little bit more consistent and fair going forward. It's also very troubling to learn about the litigation against the township yet again. We taxpayers are going to be the ones paying for this, and also perhaps the litigants' attorneys' fees as well, if they would prevail. A complaint was filed regarding Bacone South. Temporary restraints were issued by the judge. As Mr. Feld said, that's a pretty extraordinary thing. Milburn had the opportunity within 10 days to object. You did not. Why? Your zoning board did not approve the variances and denied the Bacone South application. Why in the world would you not defend the position they took? They made a commitment, Bacone did, not to consider grandfathering as part of their application, meaning they recognized the prior tenants did not have the appropriate permits and variances ever since they existed in that space, yet they opined profusely in their complaint that this is the case, and that's why this should be reconsidered. It's ridiculous. We're wasting taxpayer monies, and you're letting a group of landlords lead you by the nose, and for what purpose? We are not upholding and enforcing our municipal laws, and we're dodging this, and you owe the community an answer about this. Once again, the incompetence of our attorney is so prominent on display in this particular example. We're just getting hosed as a community by these people. It's so obvious. You hear the specific examples. It has to come to an end, and we are owed an explanation. I wanted to point out with 21-318, there's a Board of Ed policy that I happen to remember from being on the Board of Ed about corporate sponsorships. I don't know if it exactly applies, but it does say that corporate sponsorship shall not exceed 24 months in duration and will not be approved by the board in excess of 24 months. There shall be no expectation of corporate sponsorship will be renewed beyond the board approval dates. So I don't know if that applies to this or not, but it should probably be looked at. I couldn't agree more that there haven't been any public exchanges on the settlement for fair share housing. I find it pretty incredible after this whole year of attending these meetings when this stuff has been on the table that now you're getting excited about this, Mayor Kpis. Good to see, but it's really too late. We should not only have been informed and presented to, but we should have had our input received and considered. That, I think, is a big, big, big mistake. We're all going to be paying for the outcome of the settlement agreement for decades, but we had no say whatsoever. I wanted to also say about the fair share housing December 15th hearing. If I hadn't asked the question, Mr. Wasserman, I don't think we would have even known that hearing was happening at the last meeting, other than having to go through some obscure place on the website to find out that it was happening. One of my friends wrote, when you're on the Zoom call with the judge, can you tell him that no one knew about this until hours before the deadline to write? So I think it's the community is speaking loudly. There were lots of letters submitted. We just didn't have a say, and it's not right. Thank you.
Anyone else like to make a public comment? Okay. We can only hear, right? And
Hi, guys. Regina Truitt, 385 Hartshorn Drive. As always, thank you for your service. I'm just briefly going to say I fully support the ordinance that addresses rooftop decks. And I hope that, and thank you for passing the first reading. And I hope, and I plan to attend the December 21st public hearing on this ordinance. Rooftop decks, as you may remember from all of the conversation that took place earlier this year with the Woodland Road property, those decks, when they're high up, especially higher than the second level, impede on privacy. It also impacts wildlife and humans alike. And this affects all of us in ways that we can't even think of. And I also wanted to say for residential housing, Mayor Prupus, you had said that properties in Short Hills have all sorts of space. Not every property has all sorts of space. Some of the houses are closer together. And of course, with the laws of geometry, the higher up you get, the further you can see, and the further those individuals' privacy and also the flora and the fauna beneath them will be affected. And then I'm also just going to briefly say something on sort of a personal note. When I tuned in to watch this meeting tonight, quite honestly, I wasn't sure if I was watching the Millburn Township Committee meeting or Jerry Springer. I would hope that you might consider reaching out to a team building psychologist so that you can have more productive meetings that aren't quite so much of a disturbing to your community members. Never confuse passion with anger. Passion is productive. Anger blows up the room and unfortunately impacts the ability from that point forward for everyone to make positive change. So I hope you'll consider reaching out to professional help so that you all can then have more productive meetings. And thank you again for your service.
Jesse, how many more do we have on the call?
Hello, David Cosgrove. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, thank you, folks. David Cosgrove, 99 Oakview. I wanted to start out saying thank you very, very much for passing the ordinance regarding the rooftop decks and the ordinance regarding the loading and unloading zones. It's something that the entire town, the residents at least, want, and I'm happy to see it finally move forward. I also wanted to take a moment to correct a statement that Committeewoman Eglo made. She suggested to the rest of the members of the board that in connection with the Silverman development, that the size of the development got smaller as a result of negotiations. We know from the planning board meetings connected with the approval of the plans that the size of that building never changed. The town's own planner at the hearings, at the planning board hearings, said the building got bigger, not smaller. So I just want to correct that so the remaining four members of the board, don't take that as something that's an acceptable or an accepted fact. Thank you, folks, very much.
Thank you. Good evening. Sarah Sherman, 42 Greenwood Drive. I'd like to make an observation about the new direction of the Rahway River Mayor's Council. I think it's time for them to look at some alternatives to move the consensus plan forward. And I'm very hopeful that the idea of a joint flood commission will move forward. However, the one thing that gives me pause was Mayor Prupus's comment that they were waiting for Essex County support. And I do remember how long it took for Essex County to come on board to support the consensus plan. So I'm going to suggest that Committeeman Vinayak mentioned the fact that members of our township committee have forged a relationship with the county engineer in other areas, and it's very valuable for us in looking at flood mitigation. So I am hopeful that those connections will help move this new idea forward. Lastly, before we say goodbye to Winning Strategies, which is the lobbying group that worked for years for the Rahway Rivers Mayor's Council, please let's not forget that they opened many doors and that they worked with Congressman Malinowski on the wording of the Water Resources Act that made flood mitigation in the Rahway River Basin a federal priority. In my view, money spent on them was well worth it. We don't know who our next congressman is going to be. We had a very good relationship with Congressman Malinowski, and he has been incredibly supportive. So I want to credit Winning Strategies for bringing the federal representatives on board. And lastly, the $800,000 referred to, which is sort of being held by the Army Corps, that is money for a study only. And so it sits there indefinitely, waiting to be used, and nothing has moved forward. But I'm very hopeful about the Flood Commission. Thank you.
Okay, and the public comment is now over. I'd like to address two things. One thing about the money for the study, that is what I'm trying to make sure and figure out. And I was not confirmed that money is forever to be had. So we need confirmation from Malinowski's office, and they're working on it, whether or not that money, where that money goes, and is it guaranteed that we have it year after year? If the study never gets done, is there a deadline by which it needs to be used or not? And there's not a firm answer, at least they don't have one from yet. And in terms of Ms. Pizarro, the catalyst of the two-way, the conversation around the two-way circulation came out of the vision plan. It was one of the recommendations from the vision plan that we did in 2019, 2020. One of the recommendations that they came through their process was that this was something that they thought would enhance our community for a number of reasons, and that there had been support through their public outreach, and that we should further investigate it, which we have done this year and will continue to do at a slow pace until we decide not to anymore. No, you can't, not right now. Does anyone else want to address any of the questions or comments that were made during public comment?
I'll just briefly tell Mr. Cosgrove that the building might have gotten bigger, but we got less units approved. Am I right, Mr. McDonald and Mr. Falcon? Silverman wanted more units and another floor. Yeah, I don't remember all the details.
Yeah, you are correct. During that negotiation came as a result of the township being brought up on a builder's remedy lawsuit. And so there were negotiations that took place, and certainly at the beginning of the negotiation, there are demands for a larger number of units. However, Mr. Cosgrove is correct that the final settlement ended up being the same number of units, however, a larger building because the units were larger in size.
But originally Silverman wanted an additional floor,
Correct.
which we did not. We negotiated out of that. So, right.
Mr. McDonald, could you also talk about the $200K for legal fee? Because as I understand, and I actually asked this question as well, it's not just to Mr. Falcon's company.
No.
The one that $200K is being moved as a legal fee, the majority of that is towards the fair share housing legal fee.
Yes, so I think it needs to be stated that the legal budget of the township does include Mr. Falcon. However, it also includes quite a few other expenses, inclusive of the labor attorney, the special planner for affordable housing, as well as the planning board attorney and special attorney for affordable housing as well. And other consultants do come out of that legal line item. It is heavily utilized. And so I think it's and again, and that was an original $800,000 budget in which we've spent $450,000 on the township attorney. So as you can see, there's quite a few dollars that are spent elsewhere in that line item.
And we had labor negotiation this year.
We have a lot of stuff going on, including affordable housing, which is taking up quite a bit of that expense.
And then there was also mentioning of different site other than DP. There are a lot of things that was mentioned. And I'm not going to go through everything because I know we keep discussing this over and over again. But there is new thing that was discussed, different site that we have other than DPW. If I correctly remember, that site is very small compared to what the size on the DPW site that was asked by Fair Share Housing. I think it was 0.5 acre versus almost 2 acres.
You're talking about the Rimback lot? Correct.
I believe so. That is what was brought up. Because all these things were discussed and was brought up. And I believe, and I don't want to just keep pushing the blame onto other committee members. It shouldn't be the case because at the end of the day, we all voted for it. I was among the first few who actually said this 75 all complete low-income housing doesn't reflect well in the township because kids will go to school and it will not reflect well on them because they can be bullied. But it wasn't a choice. It wasn't an option. And there was a lot more done in there that I'm not privy to talk right now. But all these things were on the table. This discussion went on for over a year and a half or two. And everything was on the table, was discussed. And I was like, you got to sign this now.
Motion to adjourn the meeting.